There's no time.
The time is
13.
o'clock.
Hey everybody, here we are once again. How come you can see my laptop in the shit now? I guess I didn't know.
When did this happen? Where do you see the laptop in?
I just saw it like right there.
Oh, okay.
And,
Actually,
yeah.
it needs to kind of move a little bit towards you, the camera.
Well, I moved it earlier because it was like, I don't know what the fuck it's doing. It's kind of stuck back there. It's like falling off of the back of the desk.
Here. Yeah, I guess that's about right.
Yeah, that's usually
That's
what
about
it is.
right. Because
like I
you're
said,
getting cut off.
Because if you move it, it just...
See?
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
then, yeah, but...
See, I use Spock as my fucking aiming
Well, I
stick.
do too, but
See?
the thing about it is that it gets, like I said, it gets moved because Pookie is up
Yeah.
here farting around and it falls off the desk and all kind of crazy shit is going on back there.
Yeah, so that way, see, I am in and you are in. Like that. And Spock is fucking leaning up against the wall like that. See him?
With his
Yeah, like that. He's selling crack.
selling
He's
crack?
like, I'm holding.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought he was just back there like disapproving
No, he's selling crack.
of our shenanigans.
Yeah, he's watching.
Yeah. I mean, creepily.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because like every now and then I'll like come through here like in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I don't really do it anymore, but like
Yeah.
for a while I was just kind of like, oh, there's a person. Oh yeah, that's right. It's just Spock.
Yeah.
Because it just like looks
I
like
get
a
up,
shadow
take
of a person.
Get up, take a leak at night, and look down the hallway, and I see him standing there.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
it's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm used to it now, so it doesn't really bother me anymore. So it's like I just hope nobody breaks into the house one day and stands next to Spock because I'll just like not
I
even
put
see them.
Spock out front, so when they break in, fucking, he's sitting there on guard.
And everybody's like, oh shit, Pimp Spock. Yeah. So hey everybody, it's Wednesday.
Maniacs in, yeah.
And yeah, DJ Maniac says, too many nightclubs this week. I've been out every other night since last Friday. I have 2 more this Friday and Sunday. Yeah, we actually have Sunday night is Memento Mori at the new place. You know, there's some other, like, Dimitri's DJing at Mannequins on Friday night, but I don't know if I can, like, afford to go to both things. Especially because the Memento Mori thing is so far. And we haven't driven to that place yet, so I'm not actually
That'd
sure
knock
how
us out
long.
a couple $100 to hit both of them.
That's, yeah, so I'm thinking, well, we'll save it for Sunday, because I do actually want to check out the new place
All right.
and see what that's all about.
Yeah.
So, you know, because Mannequins is closer, so it's, like, easier to go some other time.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Next
there's
month's
that.
going to be better, I think, anyway. It's going to be easy, better on us. Money-wise.
Well, I hope so. I never know.
You
How
doing okay
shit's-
this month? Did okay this month?
So far,
Okay. You on
so far.
track?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Good.
But we'll see. I've been getting some, like, I've been getting some jobs.
Yeah.
Grampler says, if
Maybe
someone...
we'll get some super chats tonight.
You're shameless, Tom.
Yeah. I'm pimping there. I'm pimping her
So
up.
that's what I mean. See,
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
have
Yeah.
the audacity to do that.
Well, shit, we're not on OnlyFans yet.
No, I know.
I'll pimp you one breast in each hand. Making all kinds of money. Yeah.
All right.
Making all kinds of money. We can make that porn money.
Making porn
Making
money.
porn money.
I
yeah.
feel like you...
We probably would lose money.
We probably
Yeah.
would. Because, well, I kind of feel like now it's... Who makes porn money anymore? It's like,
They
you
make
know
porn
what I mean?
money. Yeah, they make porn money. It's just got to be fucking crazy.
That's what I mean. You gotta
Yeah.
do, like, crazy
It's
shit.
gotta
I
be
just feel like
crazy.
titties. Everybody's like, yawn.
You got to walk around in public with your titties hanging out and shit.
Granther says, if someone were to break in the middle of the night, what caliber would greet them?
Shit, I got a choice of them, man. Fucking 7.62 39, 5.56, 40 caliber, 9. I got 380. I don't have a 22, but I need to get a 22 kit for my ARs. There's a fucking drop-in conversion for it. I don't know how. I've never had one. They used them as training devices in the Navy a long time ago. I think Atkinson, was the company that made a drop-in kit for the Navy where you could put it in, you could replace the M16 bolt with that 22 long rifle and qualify with the M16 while you're at sea using a 22. And the kit that I've seen for sale for a couple $100 looks like a remake of that same idea, but I don't know how the accuracy is. I mean, you'd get something like that for varminting, just drop it in there, shoot rabbits or something, target. I'd have to look into it. I don't know how accurate they are. That would be the key thing.
I suppose so.
Well, yeah, because a pellet rifle will fucking do better, or for a lot cheaper. For varmints, rabbit and squirrel, pellet rifle does it better, kills them faster. I've tried that 22; it just blows right through them. Pellet rifle fucking kill them, headshots and stuff. Well, headshots kill them both, but.
Wait, we're talking about like a bunny rabbit breaking into the house?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about for varminting. For hunting.
Well,
hunting.
Well, that wasn't the question, so that was why I was confused.
No, I was talking about hunting.
Okay.
I went down a rabbit hole.
Literally this time.
Yeah, went down a rabbit hole.
See, like sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, Fourth Store Down says any intruders would be greeted by Tom, the sexual Northman.
You're fucking right. You're gonna get a dick in your booty. Come in here, man. You got a dick that'll be deep up in the booty. You're gonna walk out of here a changed man. In touch with your femininity. Wearing high heels and shit, G-string. Zach will be on the fucking door waiting for you. Come out. Zach is gonna be trying to fucking capitalize on that shit once I'm done with you. It's gonna be like something out of a maximum security penitentiary. Fucking leather daddy abuse. Just fucking fuck you up.
Well, I mean,
it's gonna be like something from fucking, like something the Spartans would do back in the day. Spartans, not only did they kick your ass and fucking killed you, if you surrendered to them, they raped you. That'd be bad. I mean, they were raping men. You're like, because compared to them, you were a woman. That's how fucking macho they were.
I mean,
Fucking
it's interesting that we're talking about that because that lies behind a lot of
I know.
Clyde's
kind
of thing.
Clyde Barrow and the Barrow Gang and shit. It's left out of kind of like the TV versions of this story. They were bisexuals. Clyde.
Well, at least according to one guy who was in the gang like many years later when he was trying to.
Well, they would abduct
money.
cops and kind of befriend abducted cops, and they let them go. They didn't really have anything against law enforcement.
They killed enough of them.
They killed some of them, but if you attacked them, they counterattacked.
Yeah, or if they thought that they were in danger.
Yeah,
they would kill
do
you
that.
for sure.
But they abducted at least one cop that I could think of, and he had a good time with them. He said they were real nice, and they eventually let him go. But he said that they were both bisexual. Now, he didn't say whether or not they molested him. I guess not. But Clive got into that when he was in prison. So he claims. He might have been like that before, but it was a weird situation. It's 1920s, man. People fucking don't realize what the 20s were like. Are we getting into this subject now already? It's a little early, huh?
I mean, not really, but yes.
Well, I'll set it up. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really come across anything like this in my research, so.
Yeah, I saw interviews a long time ago with the guy who was the cop that was evidently abducted. He was old when he was giving the interview, though. They did the interview like in the 80s or 90s. Maybe he was lying. I don't know, but I saw it on the History Channel, if I remember correctly, a long time ago. But what was I getting at?
I'm not sure.
The 1920s were a time almost kind of like now, in a way. The world was falling apart. The credibility of the government, of society's institutions, was at an all-time low in the 1920s. And it was because kind of like the Victorian era was ending, and it was just falling apart, and corruption in the United States was fucking horrible. Everything was kind of like a form of fucking usury. A lot of robber barons. It was kind of like the worst elements of centralized, ultra-powerful capitalism. And it was taking place in the United States, taking place back in Europe. And this was all stuff that eventually, in certain countries, brought out like the Bolshevik Revolution and everything. It didn't happen. That didn't happen in the United States, but it almost did. We had Bolshevik communist parties here. We had technocrat parties. We just had fucking guys that were just anarchists, and Clive Barrow and fucking a lot of the motorized bandits of the era were kind of just like anarchists. All right. Some of them were World War One veterans, coming back from World War One, and they felt that they had just been suckered in fighting a war that they had nothing to do with. It was the same old deal of the American Empire sending guys overseas to fight for a war they have nothing to do with, and then they come back and treated badly, and they said fuck it, and a lot of them were just attacking the institutions. They pretty much waged a war against banks, cops. They kind of waged a psychological warfare against the press, but some of them also kind of fucking had a weird symbiotic relationship with the press. And then they kind of had a Robin Hood type relationship with the general public. A lot of the general public liked them because they were kind of the few brave people to kind of stand up and fight against a system most people thought was corrupt.
Well, the thing about it, too, is that you have to think this is like in the midst of the Great Depression. I mean, when
right.
Bonnie and Clyde were in their heyday. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they were kind of romanticized at the time. Now, the public did turn against them eventually because their murderous ways kind of got the better of them. But at first, and it wasn't just Bonnie and Clyde, it was kind of all like Pretty Boy Floyd and all the kind of like big, gangsters and stuff, is that, most people were poor as shit. And not like poor like nowadays, like fucking poor, like homeless, no shoes, no nothing.
No electricity.
No electricity. They were like living in fucking tents and shit like that. So
everywhere was Mississippi.
Yeah, well, and the thing about it is that, in some ways they were just kind of like, yeah, these are people that have taken control of their own destiny, and they're kind of like shitting on the big institutions that they kind of like felt like put them in those situations.
Right.
And the thing about it too, there wasn't just the Great Depression, there was also like a massive drought in the Midwest, which,
Dust Bowl.
The Dust Bowl, and that was kind of like, so poverty was rampant, and like I said, it was like fucking poverty.
Yeah, and the average person blamed the institutions for all this poverty because they did fuck it up. Wall Street, big business, corrupt politicians, and then law enforcement, which kind of was protecting them. They were all kind of had a hand in the bad situation that was created. Corruption had a lot to do with it. Like the Great Depression was kind of artificially produced. Fucked up Wall Street practices had a lot to do with it. And then they started passing laws which made it even worse. I don't remember all the details, but I remember hearing a modern economist fucking say that it was an overreaction, and today that kind of shit happens all the time, but they know how to fix it. But back in those days, Wall Street could run amok, and government would run amok and try to overcorrect a problem and make the problem worse.
Well, and the thing about it was that you have to think there weren't a lot of laws in place that are in place now to kind of prevent certain things from happening, stem from that time period when those laws were not in place.
Also, and they didn't know.
That too, that's what I'm saying. Also. That's what I'm saying.
Wall Street and everything, and money markets, and what Marx would call capitalism, that's what he would call it. Most people didn't even understand how it worked. It was just like a monster running itself. Like if you read Marxist literature, I've read analysis of Marxist literature. Marx who really spoke out against it, and I think in some ways he was right emotionally in a certain way, but really Marx had no understanding of economy. He was imagining things that weren't happening. But the reality is that it was just kind of what was happening. The economy and the economy was just kind of running on autopilot. It did what it wanted to do. You could kind of manage it with laws, but the average person, the average lawmaker, really didn't understand economy, not by the modern sense of the word economy. They were also on the gold standard, which was kind of like a steampunk concept. Now we're not on a gold standard. We're on a kind of Keynesian type fucking system where you can pull money out of nowhere. It's almost like money magic. So it'd be kind of like kind of like comparing steam power with fusion. Big difference. There doesn't have to be a limited amount of money. You can make as much money as you want and put it into a system. But people have to have confidence in that system. If not, it just collapses and falls apart. Like every African government tried to do the same thing. All right, just like write up a bunch of money, but then quickly it would just collapse. And it was for a lot of different reasons. One, you got to back that money up. Usually it's backed up with guns or ships, a navy. You have to have the will of the institution printing this money has to be able to have a will that can its will must be made manifest. In other words, it has to have the ability to punish you. If it doesn't have the ability to punish you, the money isn't worth very much. All the rest of the money's in the world is leaned up against the money of the superpowers. And you're only a superpower if you can fuck shit up. If you can't fuck shit up, you're not a superpower. It's a con game, though. Money is imaginary. It's just like Indians making wampum out of rabbit dung. You take a piece of rabbit shit, put a hole through it, and fucking make some marks on it, and it's money all of a sudden. The Indians believed it, and it worked for them because they believed in it. It symbolized trade, The dollar's the same way, but you have to have confidence in it. So it's kind of funny, It's fusion now. You can make as much money as you believe the system can support, and other people don't believe it, and all of a sudden it'll collapse. Hyperinflation, like what happened in Germany and Brazil. When I was in Brazil, the money hyperinflated one day, and I thought it was leaves blowing down the fucking sidewalk. It was money. People throwing all their money out because it was worth nothing. All the money in their bank account went down to nothing.
You have to think too that this is a time in American history, which, like I said, because I know some of our listeners are not from here, but this is a time when the FBI did not exist yet. Actually, the FBI kind of came into being either directly or indirectly because of this, not just because of Bonnie and Clyde, but because of people like that, because of the whole gangster era. Yeah. Because prior to this, you didn't really have a national law enforcement thing that could come in. And the thing about it, too, was that even things like murder or bank robbery and shit like that weren't federal crimes.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people would commit a crime in a state, then move the next state over, and they'd never catch you or never do anything because they didn't really have any jurisdiction in that sense.
For a person, say, maybe in Europe, they might have a hard time envisioning the situation that exists to this day in the United States. In our states, we have counties that sometimes rival the size of a European country. All right. Some of our states are huge. Like fucking Texas is twice the size of Germany. The United States was kind of formed out of a union, kind of like the EU. All right, kind of like the European Union. The federal government was kind of just a very limited body that ran the mail and managed the army and conducted foreign diplomacy. Each state was its own country. It had its own police force. It had its own legal system. Ran its own elections. To this day, the federal government can't go into any old state with its army and boss the state around. A state could just say no, and the federal agents and federal army cannot come into your state. Each state is sovereign, like a sovereign country. Here's a good way if you're a Star Trek fan, Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, which is a little neutral zone, is basically the United Federation of Planets. That's what it is. It's the Federation. Each state is like its own planet. But what's weird about the United States is that it's all the same language, and they're all watching the same television. They all have the same mass media. So it kind of seems, especially from the outsider, that it's one country. But if you grow up here, it's different regions, and they all have their regional cultures and their own dialects, and they have their own pasts because some states tried to leave and were forced back in. It's been around for a long time. The racial makeup of each one of these states is different. So when the FBI came in, there was a weird thing that happened, that the motorized bandits like Bonnie and Clyde tried to exploit. You could commit a crime, a serious crime like a murder or a robbery, and if you could get across state lines into the state next to it, you were scot-free because that crime was committed in that state you left. The new state that you're in does not have jurisdiction over you because that crime happened over there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Right. It's like you did it in another planet.
The weird thing about it, though, is that I'm pretty sure I remember reading that even though murder and bank robbery were not federal crimes, like stealing a car and taking it across state lines was.
Yeah, well, they had certain things, certain laws that involved interstate theft.
Mm-hmm.
But they were still trying to work out a system.
Yeah.
Now, the FBI came out and it was kind of like the police force that handled crimes that involved crossing state lines.
Yeah.
In other words, it was a way of erasing that gray area. One of the main things it had to offer is it had a really good crime lab. It also had, because there were compacts with these states, they could chase an offender across state lines when a state cop couldn't do that. A federal cop could. It's still like that. It's still like that. If you commit a crime in one state, run across and then run across the state lines, there's going to be extradition pacts where the state you get arrested in will extradite you back to the state you committed in.
Yeah.
Sometimes, most of the time, the feds don't have to get involved because the states have worked that out between themselves.
Yeah, it depends what it is.
Depends on what it is.
Yeah, if it's a big, real high-profile crime, or you have like serial killers that go from state to state, shit like that.
Yeah. So this is all coming out of the early 1900s. The average person doesn't travel very much. There isn't an interstate road system. There isn't any highways yet. All that shit's post-World War II. It's dirt roads mostly. They have cars. They're on dirt fucking roads.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. These are dirt roads. That's why those cars didn't go that fast.
And one reason why Clyde swore by the new Ford V8, and every time he stole a car to, do some crimes and get away from the cops, he would always steal a Ford V8 because the cops didn't have V8s yet.
Yeah.
So he was like way faster.
And they also, they used very heavy gauge steel body parts, which could stop 45 automatic rounds. A 45 was fired out of the Thompson submachine gun and government model 1911 45 automatic pistols. The 1911 45, if you ever see it, you'll instantly recognize it. Some people call it the GI 45. It's what we carried in World War I and World War II, and they're still popular today here in the United States. They were kind of like the Desert Eagle of the fucking early 1900s. They were a big, handsome-looking, very simple pistol, fired a big old fucking slow bullet, known as the 45 1911 round. It's a 230 grain bullet, moving at about 830 feet a second, or 800 feet a second, around there usually. If I remember correctly, it might have been 820. Which is a big, heavy ball moving slow. If you're firing that also is fired out of the Thompson submachine guns. A heavy car body could stop that at a distance. Here's something else you could do with the 45. It's funny. With the Thompson submachine gun on full auto, if you got your head down behind the barrel and you let off a blast and you can see past the smoke, you can actually see the line of fucking rounds going through the air very vaguely. They're so big you can see them going down range if the lighting conditions are right. Like, it's kind of a fucking funny thing about them. Most firearms you can't do that because they're just slow and they're big. But they do a lot of damage, and they don't have to fucking expand like a hollow point to do damage. They did pretty good damage. They weren't very good at armor penetration, though. Later on, the guy who made that was John Moses Browning, designed the 1911, improved it to the fucking Browning High Power, which was 9 millimeter and carried, I think, 12 or 13 rounds in a magazine. And that was the one you saw Axel Foley carry in Beverly Hills Cop. Classic pistol. Some countries still use it, similar to the 1911. But So this is the world that Bonnie and Clyde are coming out of. And here's another thing that was happening during this era. A lot of people don't realize it. Because the institutions were basically rotten and society was breaking down, people started to figure there really weren't any rules, because there wasn't any way to enforce rules to speak of. And one of the things that they stopped enforcing was sexual morality rules. So there was a sexual revolution in the 1920s. But you had to look for it. You had to go to speakeasies, and you had to go to good nightclubs, and you had to hang out with cool people. And you'd find a lot of what they call like free love and homosexuality, bisexuality, pansexuality. They'd have polyamory. All the shit that they could give a fancy name for today, they were doing that back in the 1920s. They just didn't really have a name for it. They didn't categorize what they did. And then in all these cool places, you had organized criminals of various types, including the Italian mob. And those were like the cool guys. They were kind of like I guess you could say they're kind of like the goths or the punk rockers of their era. And they were involved in all this. They were not sexually uptight. It would have been an interesting time. Although I don't think the hygiene was that good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, it might be interesting to like go back to for like a couple days or something, but I wouldn't want to like go back and live there. No thanks.
Nah, the music wasn't very good. They were listening to radio, and radio quality of the radio wasn't that good. They had no problem with anybody being underage. It didn't seem to be a big deal to pick up fucking 11, 12-year-old girls and screw them. They just, as long as they didn't have parents that were watching out of it. It was just a weird time. And they kind of felt that they were in the apocalypse, I believe. But then later on, things changed. World War II changed everything. That was the beginning of the modern era. And in a way, it got better, but in other ways, it got worse. Because fucking power centralized. As power centralized, there's always going to be abuses. Lesson from this, what we're going to learn today, is that you can't trust a motherfucker. Humans are basically evil monkeys, evil hairless monkeys. They have always been evil hairless monkeys. They will always be evil hairless monkeys, no matter what their station in life. And the government will always kind of fucking abuse you. It's been going on for thousands of years. Take care of yourself first. Make your own decisions and live your own life. Don't sign away your life to people, because they can't fucking solve your problems. You got to take care of yourself and the people you care about. But we're going to get into the story about fucking Bonnie and Clyde. They were an interesting couple. Poor choices, though. But they were young.
Yeah, I think people forget like how young they actually were. They were like young. In their early 20s.
Yeah, real young, poor chances. Now the thing about Bonnie, most of the photos that have survived of Bonnie, she looks like a very skinny old lady, really is what she looks like. And where they're posing with guns and stuff. I saw one really good pictures of her. She's fucking gorgeous. She's really cute.
Yeah, she is.
She's really cute. And I think there's only like one or two good pictures of her where she's real cute. Most of the pictures that survive of her came out of the newspaper, and the resolution's real low, and they're not real flattering pictures of her. She's just a cute little chick. She's probably 4'10", maybe 85 pounds, little bitty thing. And the people that knew her, like the cops that they abducted, said she had a bubbly and very delightful personality, and nothing at all like you see in newspaper pictures of her. But
well, the very iconic pictures of her, like the one with the cigar, like where she has the cigar and the pistol and stuff, and the one where she's kind of like jokingly pointing the gun at Clyde, those were actually just pictures that she took, or that they took like just for fun, and they ended up being found by cops later on because they got left behind like during a shootout or something like that, and then the cops or whatever, and then the media ended up getting them. So they didn't really intend like for the media to see that. But interestingly, I kind of feel like if those photos hadn't been published. I'm not saying that Bonnie and Clyde wouldn't have been as famous. Like, I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't have been quite as famous. They still might have been famous. But I think those pictures really sealed it. Because, I mean, they kind of said, in particular, that one picture of Bonnie with the cigar, people were really, like, about that cigar. Because women didn't smoke cigars.
Yeah.
And apparently she said later, she even like told like them later, she's like, I don't smoke cigars, I just did that for the picture or whatever. And then there were even like some conspiracy theories that it was actually like not a cigar in her mouth, it was like something else, and it got changed. But yeah. But so it became like a big deal, which is hilarious nowadays because I don't think anybody would care if a woman was smoking a cigar. But back in the 1930s, early 1930s, it was like a big deal.
She was just clowning around. She was a little bitty, skinny, pretty waitress that Clive met and picked her up, and they became friends. Now, before the show starts, I want to stress that these two are not random, low-skilled motherfuckers that just pick up guns and then go out and do crazy shit. That's not what happened here. Clive was a professional criminal. He was a professional robber. They trained for this. They even did firearms training. They would buy the best weapons available, had them modified by really good gunsmiths, especially Clive's BAR. They had carrying equipment for their ammunition, and they did fire on the move, live fire training during their little travels. They didn't do this shit randomly. They were good. They were really good. And so was Bonnie. Bonnie evidently could fire a BAR from the hip while she was carrying money. And she only weighed like 85 pounds. Have a bag of money, a fucking BAR on a strap on the other arm, be at a full run and fire from the hip and hit a fucking cop about I think it's 75 meters, 50 to 75 meters away, and be able to hit him. While she was running and he was moving. So they were good. They were really good. And it's because they trained. They approached this as if it was a business. It wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment thing. And they trained on the move. They'd stop the car and they'd fucking buy They'd buy fucking ammunition and go pick up modified weapons, and then they'd...
Well, they stole a lot of weapons too from armories and shit.
Yeah, but they would take. Clive took that BAR and had it modified by a gunsmith and went back and had it shortened a lot. And then they went out and practiced with them. They were good. They were good, real good. And this is in a time when the average cop was about like a mall security guard. That was the level of the average cop. They didn't train at all.
Yeah, they weren't real super.
There was nothing.
I mean, it was like I said, it was during the Great Depression, or like a little bit after the Great Depression, and these were mostly rural
areas. And this is part of the reason why they needed the FBI. It was because the state of local cops was terrible. They were just like I said, a mall security guard with a .38 special revolver. Imagine that. That was the level you're at. Overweight, underpaid. These dudes didn't want to risk their lives for a job that paid next to nothing and had no benefits. So the cops, for the most part, weren't a problem, according to the bandits of the era. They didn't pay him anything, And sometimes a fucking robber would share loot with a fucking cop. Here, man, I know they're not paying you anything. Here, they give him a stack of money. Run. That was the state of the...
Which seems like a wise move back in those days. That's what I would have done had I been a criminal.
Nobody cared about that cop. Now, America has a much higher population density now in most areas now. Well, actually, everywhere it's higher. There's a lot more people here now. So... local police are far better trained in this era than they ever were in the era we're talking about in the 1920s. A local cop of today, in just a random county around here, is like special forces compared to the average fucking beat cop of the 1920s.
Yeah, I mean, back then, like you said, they had no special training at all. I mean, you have to think this is 1920s, early 1930s. They don't have any forensic science really to speak of.
No radios.
They don't have any radios. They don't have anything like that. These are just guys that needed a job, and they're just like, okay, fine. And that's all they had. They were undergunned. They didn't have the cars. A lot of times they had to use their own vehicles.
Yeah.
They didn't really have like police cars or anything like that.
And catching a bad guy really didn't give you much. Didn't do much for you. You know what I mean? It didn't give you a pay increase. And you're putting your life on the fucking line for somebody else's property, usually. So why would you get killed for trying to save a rich man's fucking wad of cash that you had nothing to do with it? You just let that fucker go.
Yeah,
you know
that's kind of how I would feel about it, too. I'm just like, why the fuck I want to get shot over like a bank getting... But they're insured, I assume.
Yeah, and so the police themselves were already demoralized. Most people were demoralized in this era. Which, if they say we're headed for an economic downturn right now, and if fucking it goes this way again with the population density you have now, it's not going to be pretty. And there's not an army in the world that can stop it. I was in the U.S. Army for fucking 4 years and fucking contracted for another fucking 4 years, 6, 7, 8 years after that. A little piecemeal shit here and that. Fucking the U.S. Army is not in any shape. It could barely handle Afghanistan. What makes you think it could handle something the size of the continental United States? You got the police forces that can maybe keep it on, but I saw Katrina happen, and that was like going back to the fucking dark ages, man. That was bizarre. I was in Baton Rouge at the time when that happened, like in support of the fucking state police, of the fucking Louisiana State Police, and the company I worked for helped them. And it was like, the only reason, had that happened in a European country, in a small European country, that little European country would have written about how the time that their civilization collapsed for fucking three months, and it probably wouldn't have recovered. The only reason why that area recovered is because it was just a localized area, and there was an outside areas were all stable, so they jumped in there and fucking put it back together. If that had happened in a small country, that country would be through. It was fucking wild, man. It was wild. It was the apocalypse.
Murder Hornet Return says super chats to get Tom to dance the Charleston.
No, I ain't gonna dance that shit.
You don't even know how to do that.
Yeah, I can't do that.
I kind of know how it goes, but I can't.
You have to lean forward and kick your fucking legs, feet out.
Like that. Slasher Fred, there was a folk song called The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, I think there was, and actually, I'm not really sure if that version is what I'm thinking of, but one of them had, the lyrics were actually written by Bonnie, because she was a poet, actually, and she wrote a lot of poems, and they did do, like, a song version of her one of her poems that she wrote actually before she met Clyde, but it ended up being, like, weirdly prophetic. So they used it as a song, Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde. Bundy Data says, Killing the Mob has a good chapter on them. Her hip was deformed, and he carried her some. But they, that happened later, like while they were on the run, like how that, like why he had to carry her around, which we'll
and Murder Hornets fucking mentioned that nowadays state cops can cross the state line if they're in hot pursuit of somebody. Yeah, they like I said, over the years they had all these interstate compacts started to form. So you can do that now. But although I guarantee you, that's part of some compact, and it could be that may not exist between all states. I don't know, probably, huh? Probably not.
I've never heard of it not existing between from one state to another.
Right.
I mean,
imagine they're all like that.
I watch a lot of true crime shit, and ooh, sirens.
Yeah.
Speaking of crime,
they're looking for you. They're looking for you.
What did I do?
No, Murder Hornets. They're looking for you.
Oh, I didn't know who you're talking to. But yeah, I watch a lot of true crime shit, and I never heard of like something going, hey, somebody committed a crime in, I don't know, Missouri, and just Wisconsin said no, we're not setting them back. That never happens. So I'm pretty sure that like whatever crime you commit in like whatever state, they're gonna like figure it out. Hugo says, like your wig, Jenny, thank you. Yeah, I think this is, of the three that I bought, I think this is my favorite one. I bought a white one today, like this, like similar cut, but it's white. So we'll see how that looks. I've never had a white wig before. My hair's been blonde before, like white blonde, because I bleached it before I dyed it red. And it looked okay, but I don't know what the white's gonna look like. But whatever, they're not that expensive, so I figured, why not? I wanted a purple one, but they didn't have one. They had lavender, but that was about it. So, speaking of gangsters, we talked about this on yesterday's matinee show, but I like to, talk about it on the main show. So, our friend Louie, friend of the show, who's always sending us kick-ass movies, yesterday sent us the Godfather trilogy, the Blu-ray 50th anniversary, and I'm very, very excited about this because it's probably been at least 20 years since I've seen The Godfather, and so I'm looking forward to watching the whole trilogy, and we'll probably do matinees on them, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so that'll be really good. So thank you, Louie. I don't think he's here because I don't see him in the chat, but if you are, or if you're listening later, thank you very much. You always send us good movies, and we just really appreciate it. Bundy Data said, Hoover wanted to get the robbers. He denied organized crime and killers. Getting the robbers made a name for him. He denied there was a Casa Nostra. Yeah, it's just kind of I don't know. I do kind of feel like J. Edgar Hoover was sort of involved in this whole establishing of the FBI thing. Well, like I said, it was a good idea. And it's really funny because, 1931 or 1934, when, Bonnie and Clyde got killed, that wasn't really, it was a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. You know what I'm saying? My grandparents were alive at that time. So, that's not that long ago. So it's crazy to think that, the FBI didn't even exist then. They didn't even, think of it. And so that's what I'm saying. All the crimes that I wrote about, in some of my books that happened, prior to, the 1930s, it's really interesting how easy it was to get away with shit, even horrible murders and shit like that. Because, like I said, all you had to do was, cross the state line. And to be honest, I think that Clyde Barrow knew that, obviously the criminals at the time knew that if you cross the state line, you were kind of, scot-free. So they would kind of, maneuver things, the way that they went around the country. So they were going over state lines all the time so that... they would weave through. They would kind of weave in and out because they absolutely knew that it was easier to keep from getting caught that way.
They were smart.
Yeah, he absolutely knew what he was doing. Yeah, that's for sure.
He also knew where all the border area banks were. If you were nowhere near a state border, they were going to rob from you. You had to be in a border bank.
And the thing about them being known as bank robbers. They did rob some banks, but they were usually rural banks. Yep. They weren't usually
no
big fucking banks. And they mostly robbed other shit. They usually robbed hardware stores,
yeah,
just regular stores, funeral parlors, that kind of shit. More stuff that was low key, I guess. They did rob some banks, but they weren't usually big.
Yeah, it was low risk stuff out in the middle of nowhere. It would be if you growing up all the summers in Heidelberg, Mississippi, population fucking 800 out in Mississippi, you could imagine what it was like back in the 20s, because that's a town back then was maybe 500, 300. A couple could just go in there and fucking just run amok quickly and then scoot out in an era when most people didn't have cars.
Yeah.
And there was no radio. So the cops might know, but there's no way they could radio to anybody else.
Yeah, you were kind of hosed.
You're hosed, yeah.
Kind of.
So it's kind of like the Old West. Same type of situation.
Which, like I said, I was saying while you were in the bathroom, it's 1934 when they got killed, that was a long time ago, but not really that. My grandparents were alive.
Yeah.
At that time. My grandparents were, my grandmother would have been 5 or 6, and my grandfather would have been in his teens.
6 years later, we were entering in World War II. 6 years later, he'd be going into World War II with fucking big-ass 4-engine bombers and fucking tanks and machine guns, you know what I mean? And the modern United States is starting to form, where the military-industrial complex starting to merge up, where America's becoming a fucking corporate empire, just a few years after this.
Murder Hornet says, seeing pics of that car, if you was in that car anywhere, you ain't living. Yeah. That's kind of the very definition of overkill. That car was fucking riddled with bullets.
It just looks like overkill because you had never been involved in an ambush. All right, it's what you do. Frank Hammer and his buddies got online, And they all had fucking guns. A lot of it were fucking 30-06 BARs and full auto stuff. And just a few seconds of everybody firing, that's what happens. But they weren't taking any chances.
Well, he even said that. That
Those
that
two
was
were
a quote
dangerous.
from him.
They were good. That's how good they were. They were good. Real good.
Bundy
And they
Data
were young and spry, and they were kind of kamikaze. They were suicidal. They didn't care if they lived or died. So if you shot at them or tried to apprehend them, they just go run straight at you, fucking in a team, going full auto on you with their weapons and shit. They were good. They were good. You didn't want to fucking go into armed combat with them. You know, but you know, this is law enforcement. They're forced to. You have to. So Frank Hamer was, and we haven't gotten him yet. Frank Hamer was like, we're going to fucking ambush him. And it's just a classic ambush. Classic ambush. I did ambush and counter ambush training fucking my whole time in the military, just like that. That's the way to do it. It's never fair. It's setting a trap. They come in, kill them. They don't even know it's coming. It's the easiest way to do it. You don't take any damn casualties. It means you can do it over and over and over again. And you don't lose any of your team. That's why they did.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't just pictures of the car. There are actually pictures, if you look, because I've seen a couple documentaries, of the bodies still in the car. And there's video of it, too. They actually took video of it. And Bunny Data points out, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I remember seeing the car in person. And he said it used to be in St. Augustine, the old beat-up car, like their death car. And I was like, okay, well, that must have been where I saw it, at the Ripley's Museum, because I remember seeing that car as a kid. So it must have been in the Ripley's in St. Augustine, because I went there many times as a child. So, yeah, I did see the actual death car, and yeah, that shit was, like, riddled with bullets. Actually, and I know we're, like, jumping the gun on this stuff, but I guess the guy that was doing... was embalming them was upset because it's like their bodies are so full of bullet holes that the embalming fluid was like leaking out, and he was like getting upset about it. So many bullet holes in the car and in the bodies.
When we get into this, you guys can fucking scroll over, get on your little laptops or whatever, and look at Clive Barrow and fucking Bonnie. These are not big people. I think fucking Clive might have. He's probably my size, 5'6", 5'5", maybe something like that. And Bonnie is maybe 4'11", 5'2", between that period. These are little people, and they weren't as little for their era, but by today's standards, they'd be little. And fierce little fuckers, you know, and friendly. If you were face to face with them, but if you shot at them or gave them any shit, they'd kill you.
Well, their whole thing, and particularly Clyde, and I think that just because Bonnie was so in love with him that she went along with it too. They pretty much knew that they were going to get killed doing this. I don't think they had any illusions about it.
Yeah.
And Clyde, in particular, for reasons we'll get into later, was basically like, I am not being taken alive.
Yeah, he didn't want to go back to prison.
So, yeah, and like I said, we'll get into why later on. But it's like, yeah, so he just basically said, I'm not being taken alive, so if any cops come to try to arrest me, I'm going to be able to shoot them. Or, you know, like I said, they seemed pretty, like, circumspect about, you know, we're going to get killed doing this one day.
Yeah, it was
they
like
didn't have any illusions about it.
It was like a kamikaze suicide pact. They weren't going to amount to anything in life, especially Clive. Bonnie, she was a waitress. She had an honest job, but she was a country girl, and in that era, she probably thought she'd never really amount to anything. And he offered an adventurous lifestyle and money out of nowhere. She'd probably never seen fucking $20 bill, you know.
Probably not.
Yeah.
They both grew up unbelievably poor.
Right.
Clyde more so than Bonnie, but Bonnie was pretty fucking poor too.
So they kind of saw the fucking world is falling apart. It's like the apocalypse, and they got nothing to lose. So they're going to go out with a blaze of glory. They're going to go steal money until people kill them, and they're going to fight until the day
And they did.
Day of Reckoning comes. They
And
did,
I mean,
absolutely.
And I mean, they got fucked up. I mean, they got shot, they got injured, they got all kind of fucked up shit happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, oh, they got killed in an ambush. They did, but they had been wounded many times prior to that also. And they just kept on.
Sad side of it is, had they chilled the fuck out and waited maybe another 10, 15 years, the situation in the United States started to change for a better. They probably would have ended up living normal lives and living a lot longer. But what did they know? They were fucking kids, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, and like I said, I don't want to, because I do kind of feel like Bonnie and Clyde, and we talked about this when we talked about Ned Kelly last week. I do kind of feel like criminals like this that come out in a certain era are like romanticized, and Bonnie and Clyde have been romanticized big time. I mean, and I think they were romanticized at the time, although, like I said, the more the murders started to stack up, like, the more the public turned against them. But when the movie came out with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway in 1967, I kind of feel like people, like, romanticized them all over again because it made it look kind of glamorous, even though, you know, the surviving members of the gang or people that were around back then that knew what was going on were like, it was absolutely not glamorous.
No.
You know what I mean? But, you know, it was different. But in the movie, so I kind of feel like people saw it as, like, a fucked up, like, Romeo and Juliet type story.
Which that's not what it really was.
Not really. Thank you, Janet.
Thanks, Janet.
I love the little pair.
Well,
Thanks for being you, it says.
A thing that was left out of a lot of the old movies was the sexual angle. Okay. Bonnie was kind of in heaven in a way because she was with the guys she liked. He was cute, adventurous, kind of fucking swashbuckling fucking bandit who was fucking had all this cash. And they'd go out and pick up guys and have sex with guys. So she was in a constant fucking threesome with fucking high guys. So that was part of the angle. That was left out a lot. But I think that's part of the reason. I think she loved him, but I think she also loved that lifestyle.
Well,
and that was very unusual for the 1920s, of course. Very unusual for that.
Her thing, I think, because honestly, you know, when she was growing up, she seemed like a normal girl. I mean, she was smart and, like, she had her shit together. But she also, like I said, she grew up really poor, and I kind of feel like she was, like, frustrated because she wanted to be a movie star. I mean, she wanted to, like, be somebody. And I kind of feel like, you know, when you grow up poor, you kind of feel like most of the time that shit's not going to happen for you because you don't have opportunities the same way that somebody with money would have opportunities. Right. You know what I'm saying? And it's very frustrating. So I can see how... I'm not saying she didn't love Clyde. She did, clearly. I mean, they both loved each other, like, crazily.
Yeah, and this put her in the fucking spotlight, too. The national spotlight. So she went out doing what she liked to do.
Yeah.
Unwise. She could have lived longer. But you never know her name.
Well, like you said, they were kids.
They were kids, yeah.
And honestly, I hate to say it, but it's like she wanted to be famous. She is.
She got it. Yeah.
They're both famous.
They knew they were going to die, so they had that fucking warrior gestalt of fucking what's his name? Fucking Minamoto Musashi. You know, fucking Shinmin Musashi said that you can do whatever you want as long as you're willing to give your own life for it. You know what I mean? He says, but you can't run around handing out death to other people and then bitch and moan like a pussy when somebody comes and hands death out to you. All right? It's a two-way street. And that's kind of, at least they embraced the philosophy of fucking Musashi. If you're going to go out and do that shit, you better expect to die. Live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's
and everything that I've read about them, they absolutely did expect. Like, they obviously tried to avoid it.
Yeah, well, they tried to live as long as they could.
They tried to live as long as they could, but they pretty much knew that that's how the end was going to come.
Well, that's what fucking Shinmin Musashi says, that a fucking warrior's life is the resolute acceptance of death. You must accept that you will die. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
I did it when I fucking went to my first war. I figured I'll probably die. But I'm going to have fun. And it's the psychology of a 20-year-old. Very much so.
And as I said, you have to remember that during their spree, they were both in their early 20s.
Yeah.
Early 20s.
I know the mindset. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
not excusing it. Like I said, they knew what they were doing was bad, but
yeah. Young and dumb and full of cum.
yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But Musashi lived, I think, to his 50s, though. Lived a long time. Had a fucking long trail of fucking victories behind him. I'm going to have to do a show on Musashi. Shimi Musashi.
Well,
Write that shit down.
Well, I don't know where my
Because we are into all these fucking criminals and serial killers and shit. There are guys that kind of tread and they tread the fucking boundaries. Musashi fucking, who is a great Japanese national hero. It's censored a lot of his writings, but was a person like this. He had even a weird, more tumultuous childhood and everything, though. But one of the greatest fucking yakuza samurais of all times, which I kind of put him even more like an outlaw, mercenary. You know, the samurai looked up to him. They came later.
Yeah, I didn't realize this, but a couple years back, 2019, Netflix actually did a movie called The Highwaymen, which is actually about Bonnie and Clyde, but from the law enforcement point of view. Like, so it follows, like, the law guys that, like, were chasing them and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll have to watch that one of these days. But, yeah, there have been, like, fuck tons of movies and documentaries and songs and musicals and Jesus Christ. So much stuff. So, like I said, I know she's not around to appreciate it, but maybe Bonnie would appreciate it that that she is absolutely famous nowadays. Even nowadays, people still know. And like I said, they're making movies. They don't even make movies just about them. They make movies that are like fucking based on them. You know what I mean? Like loosely. Like what was the one with somebody mentioned it earlier on in the comments with Woody Harrelson and what's her face? What's that? Natural Born Killers. That's kind of based on Bonnie
Janet's
Clyde as
asking
well.
questions about their sexuality and shit in there.
Yeah, Janet said I read a book where he wasn't that into her sexually, so I just wondered. I don't know.
No, he was.
Yeah,
He was.
I kind of feel like they were. I mean,
No.
they were pretty inseparable.
Witnesses said that he fucking loved her. He was fucking in love. But they were. I think they were both bisexual, both of them. But I think Clive Barrow was a true bisexual. He was into guys too. All right. I think. I think they, if I remember correctly, they did have some thruples with females, but that really wasn't Bonnie's thing. She was more into like threesomes with other guys, so she was heterosexual, I believe. But no, Clive was bi.
Mrs. Evans' Arty Party said I freaking love The Highwaymen. So good. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. I meant to like watch it before we did this, but I didn't have time to watch it. But I just found out about it like a few days ago. You know what I mean? Mike Barrett says, how many theatrical films were made of Bonnie and Clyde? The 60s one is the most famous, but I don't know. I kind of feel like there were a couple other ones, but some of the ones were like loosely based on them. Like I said, like Natural Born Killers and shit like that. But, you know, I don't have a list, but there were a lot. Or it's mostly like documentaries. I looked on YouTube and there's like a zillion documentaries about them from like tons of different things.
Okay.
So all right, so let's talk a little bit about okay, so I thanked Louis for the Godfather movies. Yes, I did. All right, so let's talk about Bonnie as a kid. So she's born in 1910 in a place called Rowena, Texas. Now her dad was a bricklayer, but he died when she was 4. Now, obviously, because this is 1910, you know, her mom's a widow now. They don't have any fucking money. So she moves the family, which was, Bonnie was like the second kid. And eventually, like, her mom had 3 kids. But they go back to her parents' house, which is in a place called Cement City, which is in West Dallas, and it was essentially a slum. The mom got a job as a seamstress, but like I said, she didn't live in as abject poverty as Clyde did, but she was still pretty fucking poor. They lived in essentially a slum in West Dallas. Now, Bonnie did go to school for a little while, up until she was in her teens. and was an honor student, apparently. Was really, like, liked, and she was really into poetry and shit like that. And as I mentioned earlier, really wanted to be a movie star, or she was really into photography. She really wanted to, like, make something of herself. Now, her second year of high school, she meets this guy named Roy Thornton. Now, they both dropped out of school in 1926 and got married. Now, when they got married, Bonnie was almost 16. Like, she was a little bit less than a week shy of her 16th birthday. So they got married. Which, like I said, not that weird back then, I guess. Like, nowadays, everybody would be like, what the fuck? But yeah, back then, weird, but not that weird. So, so she marries this guy. Maybe she wanted to, like, escape the slum. I'm not really sure, like, why she did, or maybe she was just, like, you know, just in love with the guy. I don't know. But so they get married, but the problem was that her husband was reportedly abusive. Also, he was gone a lot, and he was, like, kind of a low-level criminal. Like, he was always kind of getting in trouble with the law, shit like that, which maybe she was attracted by that, like why she ended up with Clyde later on. So they weren't actually, well, I was going to say they weren't married a long time, but technically she was still married to him when she died, because they never legally got divorced, but they did, like, break up. So, so she was, like, left, and he didn't really, like, they didn't see each other again until after, like, sometime in, like, 1929. Interestingly, though, she still had his wedding ring on, like, when she got killed, like, later on in 1934. Interestingly, too, when she got killed in the ambush, when her and Clyde got killed, and they asked, you know, they found out that she had been married to this guy, and he was in prison for something else, like, subsequently. So the press, like, asked him about how he felt about her dying, and his quote was, "I'm glad they jumped out like they did. It's much better than being caught." That's what he said.
Oh, I've got my drink.
So he he was actually sentenced to 5 years in 1933 for robbery, and he kept, like, trying to bust out of prison. And while he was trying to escape from the Huntsville State Prison in 1937, he was actually killed.
Who was this?
Then. This was Bonnie's husband.
Oh, okay.
Bonnie's husband, who she married when she was almost 16. Yeah, so there's that guy.
Yeah,
But
so
like
that was after the whole Bonnie and Clyde thing.
No, before.
Well, when did they die?
1934.
34, okay.
Yeah.
They started in the 20s, though, right? Wasn't it?
No.
Okay, it wasn't?
They started in 1931.
31? Okay. I thought it was late 20s. Okay.
No. No, she married in 1926.
Okay.
Right before, like, a week before she
All right.
turned 16.
All right.
And then...
Yeah, I wasn't sure of the exact dates. I always thought it was 20s when it started, like very late 20s, 28, 29. But no I guess it wasn't.
1930.
30s, yeah.
1931.
Although
no,
it was still basically kind of like the roaring 20s, but the Depression had hit by that time.
Why are you, like, leaning out of the frame?
Oh, no, over here. So it was still kind of like the 20s, but the Depression had hit by that time. Okay.
Yeah, well, the Depression started in 1929.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this was before that. But yeah, so her husband, who, like I said, she never technically divorced, but they didn't see each other after 1929. And he got killed, like, doing a prison break, because he was kind of a criminal, too. Like, kind of low-level criminal. So after her and her husband kind of, like, separated, she moved back in with her mom, and she got a job as a waitress in Dallas. Interestingly, this is another fun fact. With the restaurant that she worked at, one of the customers that would come in there all the time was a guy who worked for the post office whose name was Ted Hinton. And later on, that guy joined the sheriff's department and was actually ended up being one of the posse that ended up killing her. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's a small world. So yeah. Now, when Bonnie was about 18 years old, she started keeping a diary. This was 1929, talking about how, you know, life in Dallas, because like I said, she lived in a slum. She was just a waitress. It's like she wanted bigger things out of life, and it just, life wasn't going the way she thought it was going to go. So she kind of like started talking about that and how lonely she was. Like I said, she was real into photography and shit like that too. So now let's talk about Clyde. I'm gonna hope that I don't like start coughing because my cold went away, but
now it's coming back.
Now, no, it will. Sometimes if I have a cold and then it goes away and I feel fine, but every now and then I get like a dry hack that and I start having coughing fits for like a week or two afterward. So Clyde Chestnut Barrow. His middle name's Chestnut.
That's weird. I didn't know
that is kind of weird.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, that's his middle name.
Yeah.
What a weird.
I've never heard that before.
I have never heard that either.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a nickname, like it should be in air quotes,
Right,
but it's not. It's not. That's his name.
Never heard that.
So he was born in 1909. So he's a year older than Bonnie. And he was actually born into a farming family, also in Texas, like in a little place like southeast of Dallas.
And pretty much everyone was in that era.
Everyone
a farming
was,
family.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Now, his parents had 7 kids, of which Clyde was the 5th. Now, when we talked about the Dust Bowl earlier, there had been like a really bad drought, so a lot of farming families were kind of like losing their shit because, no crops.
Topsoil blew away.
Yeah, because no crops. And that's essentially what happened to the Barrow family. Now, they ended up moving, so a lot of people moved into the city, like looking for work. So they moved to Dallas, along with a lot of other families, like in the early 1920s. Now, they moved to a slum, and at first, they were homeless. For the first few months that they moved to after they moved to Dallas, they were essentially living under their wagon for a while. And then they were really excited when they finally scraped up enough money to buy a tent that they could live in. So like I said, this is abject poverty we're talking about. There's a whole family that's basically living in the street, like living in a tent, like a lot of other families were at the time. Because like I said, it's just like a bad situation all around. Now, so Clyde seemed like, I don't want to say he seemed like a criminal from a young age. But growing up in those circumstances, I mean, you're going to see, they don't really see like they have any other option in life, I guess.
He's fighting back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
he doesn't want to be a poor nobody.
Yeah. I mean, who does? That's what I mean. It's not fun. Being poor is not fun.
Some people are like, fuck it. There just resides to it. But some people aren't. There was something about the organized criminals of the fucking early 1900s. This even goes into the damn Italian mafia. Part of what made the Italian mob good is that under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have been criminals. They would have just been normal guys conducting fucking normal business. They were kind of forced into criminality because of a fucking shitty economy. So that meant your average organized criminal was a pretty good quality. Compared to today, there were no other options. You either accepted your place or you did something to fucking get out of it.
Well, like I said, I kind of feel like that's why at first, the public responded so positively to Bonnie and Clyde, not just because it was romantic, because it's like a couple, but also because, hey, they actually took the reins of their own life, which a lot of people couldn't do back then because they were so poor.
Yeah, when economies get really bad, depression, recession eras for a long period of time, you got good people resorting to crime. So criminals get better. Because they normally wouldn't be a criminal. They're forced into it.
Yeah.
So they're kind of being drafted, Yeah. That's not me saying this. I fucking read a book about it. So you have high IQ people fucking being forced into crime, and they're good at it. And they ended up fucking being famous for it.
Mrs. Evans' Artie Party says, bet Chestnut was his mother's maiden name. That was common. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. No. That probably was. Yeah, because they did do that a lot back then. Somebody said, Somebody said that Bonnie's, this was also Mrs. Evans' Artie Party, said, I think Bonnie's photos are in the MoMA. Yeah, that's Museum of Modern Art. That's in New York City. Which they very well may be. I've been there a couple of times. I don't remember seeing them, but that might not be on permanent display.
Most of the ones I saw came out of the newspaper. They look like shit. But then I saw some other ones where they were photos of her. She's cute. Real cute.
Yeah, there are a couple of photos of her. I saw a couple of photos of her with her first husband. I saw kind of like a glamour shot of her where it looks like she has false lashes on and she looks like a movie star.
Yeah, I think that's the one I saw.
Like a glamour shot, yeah. And then there are kind of the famous ones. Like I said, the famous ones they took like while they were on the run, and those were just like in a camera that got left behind. So there was that. So Clyde, his first arrest was when he was 17 years old in late 1926. Now, what happened with it? It's a lot of people say, oh, it's stealing cars or car theft. It wasn't exactly car theft. It was he rented a car and then he didn't bring it back.
Yeah.
So the rental company was like, hey, he stole the car. So it wasn't kind of like he carjacked or he just rented a car and just didn't bring it back.
So they just called it theft. It's kind of theft. You didn't bring
It
it
is
back.
theft. It is technically. I'm just saying it's not probably what you're thinking of, where he just like broke into a car and stole it. But like it was that. So that was his first arrest. He was only 17 years old. He got arrested a second time with his older brother Buck, who would later become part of the Barrow Gang. And that was for possessing stolen turkeys. Like they were trying to resell some turkeys they had stolen. Now, from 1926 to 1929, when he was like late teens, early 20s, he did actually have some legitimate jobs. Like he seemed like he was trying to like have a normal life, I guess. But he also had like some criminal shit going on the side. You know what I mean? He would also like kind of rob some stores, steal some cars, you know, break into some safes, shit like that. Like petty shit. Doing that kind of stuff. Now these two, Bonnie and Clyde, met each other. Well, there are a lot of different stories about how they met each other, but the one that has the most credibility, I guess, says that they met in January of 1930. And it was at the house of a friend of Clyde's, whose name was Clarence Clay. And
Is that the Bonnie Parker photo you're talking of?
No.
Okay.
That's not it. That's her as a kid, I'm guessing.
That's actually one of the good photos of her.
Yeah, she was a cute girl.
Yeah.
No, the one I'm talking about was, like I said, it was like a glamour shot. It was almost kind of like blurry around the edges, and she had like really big eyelashes, and she was kind of looking up like that. That wasn't it either. She's like, what the motherfucker?
Like, she's mugging up for the camera. Yeah.
She's like, what the she doesn't want her picture.
Yeah. There. That's some more.
Oh yeah, I never saw that one actually.
So she's cute. Attractive.
I mean, I have to say that it probably helped as far as their fame went. That both of them were really good looking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they're cute.
Because if they'd been like ugly or old or
you would have forgot about
fat or something like that,
they wouldn't have been a sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like seeing the photographs, and like some people were like so free to like, look at this tiny little girl, and she's got like a cigar and a gun, and she's like shooting cops and shit like that, and people were like enchanted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I kind of feel like if she was just like an ugly old bat, everybody would be like, hang her,
fuck her.
Hang her.
Yeah.
You know?
They're like, how'd this happen? Society was falling apart. It's bound to happen. You have millions of people.
People are always more.
Like it. Yeah.
I mean, the thing about it is that whether it's a criminal or whether it's a victim of crime, I'm sorry to say this, but people are gonna feel like more about it if the person is good looking.
Well, there's the star power.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, star power.
And it's sad that it happens that way because, you know, if you're ugly and you get murdered, I feel like people probably aren't gonna care as much.
Yeah.
Is that if you're like a little white girl who's like super cute and you get murdered, then everybody's gonna like fucking flip out about that.
Find the white girl.
Yeah, and it's just like, and it's a problem. I mean, you know what I mean? And I've heard like a lot of, you know, people that are into true crime and a lot of people that investigate this kind of stuff, they're like, it's a real big problem because obviously nobody deserves to get murdered or kidnapped or whatever, but people are gonna put more resources, even if they don't realize that they're doing it, into victims that are good looking. And the same thing happens like with criminals. I kind of look at the fucking shit around Ted Bundy or like the fucking or that bitch up in her that was who was that was her name, Carla Homolka, and her boyfriend, the Ken and Barbie killers.
Yeah.
Everybody was like all up in that because like look how good looking they are. Look,
Yeah, and they're killing people.
and they're killing people.
Yeah, killing good-looking girls. That's what they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird. It's like a weird.
Well, it's like sales.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like sales and marketing. People who have a popular look and fucking, you know what I mean? They're going to attract more attention, and they go, oh no, not them, really? Because then the store,
How could a good-looking person go so wrong?
How could they be so bad? Look how
It's like
pretty
if they're
are.
ugly, then everybody's like,
They're
oh well,
yeah,
of course. Of course.
It's human nature. Humans are evil, hairless monkeys. That's what they are.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I don't know about that because like we are aware of it.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are aware
It's
of
just
it.
instinct. It's human instinct. You're like, well, why are they doing it? Those are high-value people. Why are they doing it? Because that's
Paul
the way it is.
Bernardo, that's his name. Thank
Yeah.
you. I remember her name, but not
It's not, and here's the thing: it's not just women, okay? It's also not just white people. I started fucking working out and getting bigger. No, people treat me differently now. Better, a lot better than before. And look, a real good-looking black girl is going to be treated very different from a fucking ugly black girl. It's gonna be the same. It's the same thing with white people. An ugly white girl is not gonna be treated the same as a fucking really good-looking white girl. It's just it's just the way it is. Race is only a small part of the factor. It's how hot you are. That's really what it is. But that's just the way people are.
Yeah, but like I
It's
said,
in them.
if you're in law enforcement,
Yeah.
I do kind of feel like you have to make a concerted effort to get over that because obviously,
Well, I think they do.
yeah,
They try.
well, you have to be aware of it. And like I
Right.
said, I have read a lot of articles from people in law enforcement or people that study that kind of like sociologists and stuff, people that study that. It's like, look, we really need to get past that bias if you're in that because, you know, just because a little girl is not as cute
Right.
as this little girl, it's like
Right.
that doesn't mean she deserves less
No.
to be found than
Right.
this cuter little girl
Right,
over
yeah.
here. You know what I mean? Because that's fucked up.
It's all little girls.
It's
Yeah.
fucked up.
You're right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
but it is a bias that has to be overcome.
They try.
They do. They do.
And you know, another part of the problem is that there are just certain fucking areas of the country that are super high crime. So many crimes happening in that area that you just can't keep up with them all. And they try, but they just fuck, you know. But luckily, those areas are temporary. They come and go quickly because they kind of depopulate or the fucking economy changes. You have it where whole cities, whole wings of cities fucking collapse and vanish over the decades, you know.
Bundy Data says she looks like Patty Hearst, oddly. She does a bit, now that you mention it. I've been wanting to do a show about Patty Hearst for a long
She's
time.
cuter than Patty Hearst.
It never wins in the poll,
Yeah.
though.
She's cuter than
One
Patty
of these days we'll do a show about Patty Hearst.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do a show about Patty Hearst.
Hearst. I think she's cuter than Patty Hearst.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, so, okay, so we're at when Clyde met Bonnie. So it's at this house that belonged to Clyde's friend, Clarence. Now, at this point, Clyde was 20 and Bonnie was 19. Now, Bonnie, she had been working as a waitress, but she either quit or got fired or whatever. But she'd been staying with a friend of hers. She had a broken arm for some reason, and she was staying there, like, kind of recovering, and she was out of work at the time. Clyde dropped by this house for whatever reason. He goes into the kitchen, and reportedly, Bonnie is in there making some hot chocolate, and it was, like, instant... Yeah. Supposedly, like everybody that was there said it was like instant, like love at first sight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I don't know, but that's what a lot of people said. They said they were just immediately like smitten with one another.
I'm gonna try to pull up a good photo of fucking Clive Barrow. Go ahead.
Yeah, because he was like a good-looking dude
Yeah,
too.
yeah, he's good. He's
Like I
good
said,
guy.
they were both good-looking people, so I think that really like helped with their with their notoriety, I guess, because they were both good-looking. So yeah, so by all accounts, they totally like just fell in love like immediately, and became like inseparable over the subsequent like few weeks and months. Sadly though, this whole like burgeoning romance got interrupted because Clyde got arrested not too long after they met and convicted of auto theft. Now at this point, April 1930. He's 21 years old. He gets sent to Eastham Prison Farm for the auto theft. Now, not too long after he was incarcerated there, he escaped. He actually escaped using a weapon that Bonnie had smuggled into him. Unfortunately, though, or fortunately, depending on which side of the shit you're on. Okay.
There's Clyde Barrow.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Look at his little jug ears.
Yeah. Big old ears.
That's okay.
Although
It works for him.
they compare him to some modern actor in this who could play him. What's that guy's name? Do you know?
That's Tom Holland.
Tom Holland.
Right? Isn't it?
Yeah, if you look
The
at him
kid that
side
plays
by
Spider-Man?
side.
Isn't it?
Yeah, the guy who plays Spider-Man. Tom Holland. Yeah,
I
they're
remember
very
because
similar.
it's the same name as the
Yeah.
guy that directed Fright Night.
Yeah.
That's how I remember. Kazuo Ueda. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. They were from the Texas. Please forgive bad English. Oh, that's
Texas,
That's
yeah.
okay. Yeah, they were both from Texas.
Yeah, what country are you from, bro?
It looks Japanese, but I'm not really sure. Like, the
Okay.
name looks Japanese, but I'm not entirely sure. So please forgive me if I'm wrong on that. And please forgive me if I butchered your name. I'm terrible at that kind of shit. But, yeah, they were both from Texas. And they're, like, a very, very poor part of Texas. West Dallas. Slums.
Yeah, Kazuo Ueda. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, yeah.
That sounds like a Japanese.
I think Japanese, yeah.
Yeah. So he goes to the farm, he escapes, but then shortly afterward he is recaptured. Now this is probably, I kind of feel like this is a situation, we talk about this because we've done a lot of shows about like killer couples and shit like that. Clyde, I kind of feel like prior to this, he's a minor criminal. Car theft, minor robberies, shit like that. Like nothing violent. But him getting sent to Eastham Prison Farm, I kind of feel like this was a formative thing for him. Had he not been sent there, had the shit not happened to him that happened to him there, I don't know if shit would have gone down the same way. Likewise, I'm not sure, had Bonnie not met Clyde, if she would have become a criminal on her own. I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, she would have been a waitress.
Clyde, I think, just
Yeah.
would have been a criminal, but maybe just a petty criminal. I don't think he necessarily would have been a murderer, but, you know, maybe he just, like, stole cars and shit like that. But I think that his time at this prison farm and the fact of them meeting, I think it was one of those things, you know.
When he met her, he was already stealing.
Yeah.
He had a shit ton of money. He laid it out on her. He laid it out on the table at the restaurant where she worked at, and fucking showed. He showed her how much money he had, and she was impressed.
Yeah,
And
he says
then
Japan. Well, he said
What's that?
Nippon, but that's Japan.
Yeah, Nippon. Yeah, I lived in Korea for a year. Yeah,
I've always wanted to visit Japan, actually.
expensive.
It is. Well, and plus, like, the flight is so long.
Long, yeah.
And I hate flying.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if I went, I'd probably have to, like, drug myself the whole entire time. So I could just sleep the whole time, because I'm like, I hate being on a plane that long. I didn't even like being on a plane from here to the UK, which is only, like, 8 or 9 hours. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, like, fucking kill me.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it. Flying over the fucking Atlantic Ocean. Fuck that shit. But yeah, so what were you saying?
Nothing.
You were saying something.
No.
Oh, okay.
I was?
Yeah. Anyway.
I was telling. Okay, I'll tell him that I was in a place called Imjimgak, which is in Korea, right in the middle of Korea, in between North and South Korea on the DMZ. I was there for a year. Had a good time. I liked it there, but didn't get a chance to see Japan. Although it was close. Should have gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go one of these days.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's kind of when I win the lottery.
Yeah.
Maybe. That's sad. There's a lot of places I want to go, but it's like, fuck, man, I can't afford it. I can't
You
afford
have
it.
to go to the goth clubs there.
That's what I mean. I can't even afford to like drive down the fucking street, much less like fly around the fucking world. So there's that. So yeah, so he goes to the prison farm, he escapes, but then he gets sucked back in. Now, Clyde, very famously, called Eastham Prison Farm that hellhole.
Yeah, hellhole, yeah.
Basically, this wasn't like. I mean, I'm sure prisons nowadays are no walk in the park. I'm not saying that.
Back in those days, they were
But
much
back
worse.
in those days, they didn't really have any laws or regulations or anything like that. It's like you could kind of do. I mean, the guards would beat the prisoners, murder the prisoners.
They would rape the prisoners sometimes.
Rape the prisoners.
Yeah.
They'd put you like in boxes and like stick you out into the sun. They would do shit like that.
Yeah. Now there was a prison reform that happened later. Matter of fact, remember Panzram? Carl Panzram.
Yeah, we did a show about him.
He was created in a prison where they. Well,
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
No. Actually, it was a boys' home, which
Yeah.
is a young prison a prison for young boys.
Yep.
And the sexual molestation and rape turned him into a monster.
A monster.
A monster.
Sure. Yep.
And then he was thrown into prison, and his favorite guard, who took care of him, listened to his whole story, ended up later on growing older and becoming powerful and reforming America's prison system based on what he'd heard and saw
Yep.
in Carl Panzram. And we did a show on Carl Panzram a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So it's in our archive. A monster. Carl Panzram was a monster.
Well,
he was a
you're gonna
rapist
do that.
only raped men. He would kill a woman. Now, they're not worried about the woman. He'd rape the men. And make men rape each other, and then he would kill them. He was fucking crazy. And that was 30s also, what, 1930s?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah.
He did
Carl
not give a
Panzram
fuck.
He was crazy.
Well, the thing about, I kind of feel like the concept of prison as a place for rehabilitation, which it's still really not.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like maybe there's more of that than before. But prior to this, I mean, back in this era, prison was just seen as
was
we're
hell.
just gonna we just want to like break you
Yeah.
as a person. We don't
Right.
give a shit about like you going back in society or anything. We just want to be as fucking cruel and horrible
Right.
to you as we can.
Yeah, nowadays-
not realizing that that's gonna make them worse.
Make
Like
them
those
worse.
people
Yeah.
might have to be released at some point.
It's university for criminals. Fucking
Yeah.
Make you meaner. But nowadays, most states in the United States, they've... California is still one of the roughest ones because they just can't control California. The prison population is fucking crazy. But most states, at least they have basic protection for the prisoners. They don't allow prisoners to murder and rape one another. They don't allow, so they punish people in prison for bad behavior. But in this day, when they're talking about in this story, behavior between prisoners was not regulated.
Nope.
No.
They didn't give a shit.
They didn't give a shit what prisoners did to
Nope.
each other. So they would rape and murder each other, and they'd be, oh, well. And then a prison guard would, who, if he was a sadistic homosexual, he would jump in and rape fucking prison inmates.
And no one could say, no one
Nobody
said
could do
boo
anything.
about it. No one
Yeah.
said boo about it. Nobody.
So that profession attracted bad people
Yep.
as wardens. Well, Carl Panzram and the warden one of the prison guards that took care of Panzram ended up becoming an influential player in the prison system, and he changed it. And he wrote a book about it. We talked about him on that show.
Yeah, we did.
I forgot his name. But he kind of saved America from itself when it came to the prison system.
'Cause
He's
like I
you
said,
can't do this. You're
look,
making monsters.
It's like
Right.
I understand that people don't have a lot of sympathy for criminals.
Right.
I don't either. Like, depending on what you did. If you just did, like, some minor shit, like stealing a car or whatever, I don't give a shit
Right.
about that. You shouldn't be fucking raped and
Right.
beat up or shit. Like nobody deserves that. Come
Right.
on. You know, it's a different thing if you're talking about, like, some sadistic serial killer or some shit like that. But obviously, I mean, just for the sake of society as a whole, whether we're talking about, like, punishing that one person, I was just from a practical standpoint, don't put somebody in an environment where they are treated as though they are worse than nothing, as though they can just be like beat and killed and raped with impunity. That's really not going to help anything, especially if that person is going to have to be released at some point in the future. Like if they just did some minor crime, like I said, like Clyde did, like stealing cars or turkeys or whatever, and then he gets put in this place when he's like, 20, 21 years old, and then gets like beat up and raped and shit like that.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be released later on.
You're
that's-
releasing a demon.
That's
Right.
yeah, you're making people into monsters.
Right, yeah.
is what you're doing.
Kazuo says he's in Nihon. Okay. I don't really know where that is.
Okay.
Nihon.
I'm not entirely
Hopefully
sure
you can understand our English. If you have any questions, just go ahead and drop it in the comment
I mean, because
section.
our English, it's drunk.
This is now drunk English.
It's drunk English.
So you better get your drink.
It's
You're
drunk
Japan,
English
it's
and
drunk English.
a lot of swearing English.
Yes.
I think I've been doing okay with the
No,
swearing.
you're doing great.
though.
You're doing great, Jeff.
I think I've been doing okay
great.
with the swearing, though. I haven't. I don't know. I swear a lot and I can't talk like without swearing much. So I'm sorry if I swear too much. I haven't really had anybody complain about that lately. So maybe everybody that complained about it is fucked off. Which, you know, good riddance. Good riddance. But yeah, so I don't really know. Like I said, back then they just kind of felt like the whole thing was like, oh, well, if you do like just a minor crime, we're going to put you in prison and then they can just like treat you like the worst fucking shit ever. And I was like, that's not good for anybody. And like, I don't know. It's to me, it doesn't make any sense to me, but okay. So, yeah. So they treated the prisoners horribly, no matter what they were in prison for. So in this prison farm, and it wasn't like a prison, like a high security prison. I've seen like, there was a documentary about it where it's obviously not still, you know, in service anymore. But as far as like when this documentary was made, it was a BBC documentary. I don't know what year it came out, but they had the guy like he went to this place and it's still kind of there, but it's like abandoned, obviously. So it's all like fucked up and everything. But it's not like a high security, like big walls with the barbed wire and shit like that. It was like a farm. So it was like a labor camp, essentially. It was like a forced labor camp. Now, while Clyde was in this prison farm, yeah, he was beaten up, he was abused and shit like that. But the big thing was that he was repeatedly raped by this other inmate. Now, this other inmate was a guy named Big Ed Crowder. They called him Big Ed because he was 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. So he was like much bigger than Clyde. I don't think Clyde was the only other inmate that he raped. I think he would just pick on anybody that was littler than him, which was pretty much everybody. And so I kind of feel like most people thought that they didn't really have any recourse to say anything about it. So, yeah. So he raped Clyde many, many times until Clyde decided he had had enough of this shit. And like I said, I'm Team Clyde on this one. I'm just gonna say I understand why he did this, and I don't think he should have gotten in trouble at all. He lured Big Ed into the bathrooms, which were all open, of the prison farm, and he basically beat him to death with a pipe, like he crushed his skull. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming that he worked this out prior. But he crushed the dude's skull, you know, after he'd raped him repeatedly. And like I said, I don't think Clyde was the only inmate he raped. I think he was kind of known for doing it because he was bigger than everybody else. Big Ed Crowder was his name.
So he was a predator, sexual predator.
Yeah, so he like did it. So Clyde said, "I'm not having any more of this."
Yeah.
So he beat him to death. So he had worked it out apparently with this other inmate who was named Aubrey Scally. Now, Aubrey Scally was already serving a life sentence for highway robbery, and he apparently was friends with Clyde, and he said, I'll take the rap, I'm already in here, like, they can't do anything more to me, so he said that he did it. Now, interestingly, I looked up some newspaper articles that came out at the time that Ed Crowder was killed, and the newspaper reports all said that he died in a knife fight, and that he had been stabbed 15 times. That's not true, though. That's not what happened. What happened was that Clyde Barrow beat him to death with a lead pipe. But the other guy, like, took the rap for it. So they just, like, released that as the story. Now, all of the shit that happened at this prison farm made Clyde so angry, as it would, like I said, understandably, that he's like, look, I'm going to... He kind of started conspiring with this other prisoner who was named Ralph Fultz, who was 19 at the time.
Welcome back, Sass.
Hey, what's up?
She's talking. She just jumped in.
I've just gotten here, and first thing I hear is about raped by Big Ed. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like a bad time.
Yeah, we're already talking about sexual
It
assault.
really does. I mean, yeah. Like I said, I don't excuse. This is just like we were talking about with Ned Kelly and all this other kind of stuff. Look, and we talk about this with serial killers. The shit that happened in the past, it doesn't excuse what they did in the future. Because a lot of people had fucked up shit happen to them in life and didn't, like, go on to kill other people. But I understand it. I understand where you're coming from with that. It was fucked up. That shouldn't have happened to you. You probably should have done the shit you did later. But I'm willing to give you a little bit of
built up
leeway
a
on that.
rage within
Sure.
them. So,
And I get that. I do.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Not everybody reacts the same way.
Yeah.
Now,
But-
I want to say something. What's his name? What's the Japanese name? Kazuyo Yaeda. He must be in here because I was talking about Shimen Musashi. He must have heard me talking about Musashi.
Maybe.
Yeah, I read Musashi. He's a great Japanese warrior. Great man. Wise, very wise. Good.
But yeah, so he starts conspiring with this other inmate, Ralph Fultz, who would later kind of like join his gang off and on. And he's like, look, one of these days we're going to get out of this prison. We're going to get a gang together and we're going to come back and fucking raid this place and like kill everybody. So a lot of people think that maybe Clyde Barrow's whole thing about we're just going to like fucking kill them all and like God sort them out kind of started from this. It was mostly like hatred against this particular prison farm, like all the authorities there that had fucked him over. He got raped, he got abused, other inmates did as well, and he's just like, I hate this place more than any other place on earth, and he just wanted revenge against this particular place. And he did get it, sort of, like later on, but it was kind of one of his big motivating things, like throughout his life, I feel like. So there was that. So, yeah, so that was his first murder, was Big Ed Crowder. And like I said, good riddance, gotta say. I mean, I'm sure no one's gonna mourn that fucking guy. Now, interestingly, because this is a prison farm, and like I said, it was like all forced, it didn't have big walls or anything like that, but it was like forced labor. So you had to like work out in the fields, and Clyde didn't really want to do that. So he decided, he either did it or he had somebody else do it. I suspect he probably did it himself. He cut off 2 of his toes with an axe.
Yeah, to get it. Yeah.
In 1932, so he wouldn't have to do it. And also, maybe he thought that he would get out of prison earlier, like if he did that. Now, because of that, like I said, I think he did it himself. At least according to his sister-in-law's account, which she wrote when she was in prison later on, like after the whole shit happened. She said that he cut off his toes, so I guess he did it himself. He cut off his own toes. Who needs toes?
Fuck
Come
toes.
on.
He's trying
Fuck
to get out
toes.
of work. Trying to get out of work.
Okay. He's putting on a sexual tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, become a sexual
shit.
Tyrannosaurus Rex. Get more sexual.
Why? Because we were talking about
Talking about
man
toes.
rape
Talking about it. We're talking about prison
and cutting off toes with
and
an
everything.
axe.
Yeah.
That's pretty hardcore. I mean, you really, really have to want to get out of work to like cut your own toes off with an axe. Gonna say, it would take
Maybe
me
he
a
meant
lot.
to do something else and it fucking slipped. And he's like, yeah, I did that. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think he did it on purpose. Now, like I said, some accounts said that maybe he got somebody else to do it, but I don't know. According to his sister-in-law, he did it himself.
I'm not worried about it.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You got to really not want to work. So I kind of respect that. I don't want to work in this prison farm so much that I'm going to cut my own fucking toes off. All right, that's fair enough. You're willing to go that far?
Kazuo, did you see Lone Wolf and Cub? Did you see Lone Wolf and Cub? The 3-movie series? I see 3 or 4 movies.
It's like 26 movies, isn't it? No, it's six.
No.
It's 6 movies.
6 movies, yeah.
I was thinking of Zatoichi. I was thinking of Zatoichi.
No.
Zatoichi.
She gave me the whole movie series, man. With Katsushin's brother in it. Man, that's a good one. I ought to get that shit. Show it to you. Great movie.
Glenn Little says in Kelly's day they call
He
that.
goes high.
Yeah.
Man, come on.
That means yeah, right?
Yeah, I know.
I know. At least
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
that
yeah.
much.
Yeah, he's
Glenn Little says in
that's
Kelly's.
an American dude pretending to be Japanese.
You don't know that.
I don't know that, but yeah.
Yeah, you're just
my
talking out your
instincts.
ass.
My instincts tell me that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, your instincts are
My
just so
instincts,
infallible.
yeah.
Glenn Little says, in Kelly's day, they call that knocking on Joe. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Nick
yeah.
Cave wrote a song about it. I love that fucking song, actually. That's on his second album, Firstborn is Dead. One of my favorite Nick Cave songs, matter of fact. So he cuts off his own toes. Now, because of this, he actually had a limp for the rest of his life, which wasn't very long, spoiler alert. But what he didn't know was that behind the scenes, his mom was advocating to, like, get him out of this place early. Like, he didn't know what she was doing, I guess. So 6 days after he cut the toes off, they came in and said, okay, you're free. Like, your mom engineered it. So he was like, fuck me. Like, me, I'm imagining. Fuck me, I kept my toes off for no reason, and now I have to limp the rest of my life. But you know what I mean. So he got paroled in February of 1932. Now, obviously, because of the shit that had happened in him, like, happened in there, like, a lot of his family and friends and stuff like that said, you know, he was, like, pretty cool when he went in that place. When he came out, he was a completely different person.
Yeah.
His sister said something awful sure must have happened to him in prison because he wasn't the same person when he got out. And one of the most famous quotes about this was from a friend of his friend, another inmate, Ralph Futz, said that he watched Clyde change from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Like, right before his eyes. Which, like I said, understandable. So that shit might have fueled his whole entire crime spree. Because he was fucking mad. He was fucking mad.
Yeah. Like I said, prison is university for criminals.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I don't really...
It's training.
Yeah, because all they do is hang out with other criminals.
Yeah, and fight each other.
And fight each other and get treated shittily and, like...
Yeah, and learn...
Why would that make you want to be...
Survival of the fittest.
Why would that make you want to be any better, like, when you get out?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like... I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're going to have prison... Because, you do need prison. Because some people really need to be away from the population for a while. Because of what the shit they did. But... I kind of feel like, one, if you didn't do anything super violent, don't put him in with other violent criminals. That's dumb. And it's like, also, you have to, if somebody's just going in for a short stint, please keep in mind that this person has to go back into the community at some point. So let's try to mitigate, let's try to, like, make this whole transition easier. Don't make them like a worse criminal than they were when they went in. You know what I mean? It just seems like common sense, but I don't know why they put, like, hardened criminals in the same place alongside people that just had, like, bullshit, like, drug convictions and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like two completely different things. And like I said, keep in mind that some people have to be released back out into the community. You don't want to, like, make somebody even worse than when they went in there, which seems to be the case in this situation.
Yeah. Okay, so the guy we got in the comment from Japan, Kazu Ieda, is a famous bartender. A famous Japanese bartender. They're trolling us. Good.
There are some famous bartenders.
They're fucking, yeah, he's trolling.
So, what's in a dirty Girl Scout?
I don't know.
I'm not asking you. I'm asking the famous bartender.
Yeah, right, yeah. He's a famous Japanese. He's a famous Japanese. He'll just Google this shit. He's a famous Japanese fucking.
He's just gonna Google it.
He's a famous Japanese bartender. Same photo and everything.
Okay.
That's funny.
So yeah. So after Clyde got out of Eastham, he started doing a lot of robberies, mostly minor shit, gas stations, grocery stores, little stores, like shit like that. His favorite weapon, as I'm sure Tom will be very happy to point out, the M1918 Browning automatic rifle, or the BAR.
BAR.
That was like his gun of choice, just like the Ford V8, like which had new come out, was his car of choice.
Yeah, but it wasn't the BAR that you know. You know what I mean? It was his was customized. He had a shortened stock, shortened barrel by a few inches, and then he put reinstalled the flash suppressor on the end, if I remember correctly. I think it still had the flash suppressor. So he had a shorter version of it. He was trying to take the BAR and turn it into what we called an assault rifle. He even took 2 magazines and connected them together to try to make a 30 round or a 40 round magazine. But he had that, and he had that done by some good gunsmiths that he had access to driving through, who knew who he was. You're like, yeah, I'll make you some cool guns. And no, he liked that one, and it at that particular time in history, that was a pretty decent choice. Some people would say, well, why didn't you go for the Thompson submachine gun? A submachine gun fires pistol caliber ammunition. It just doesn't have the penetration, especially back in those days. In those days, car bodies were a lot heavier. And the Thompson submachine gun fired 45 ACP, which was not good for armor penetration, really. Good directly on flesh, but behind steel, 9mm was a lot better. And Thompson wasn't available in 9mm. It was limited to it was available in 38 Super, but those were harder to find, and the ammunition wasn't quite as common. So he went with 30-06, which is fucking large size rifle caliber. Take care of the problem. Chew a car right up. The ammunition was heavier. Couldn't carry as many magazines. It was only a 20-round magazine for it, but in that era, you would outgun anybody if you had a short-barreled BAR. He had the buttstock cut down, but there's a buffer inside a BAR buttstock. A metal buffer, tubes in it. But they had it kind of strategically cut down where you could kind of sling it. He could sling this thing underneath his coat and go up into a bank or a store and pull it out. It was still probably kind of like the size of a 16-inch M16A2, or it should be 16-inch AR-15, like that, about that big. Heavy though. But for the 1930s, he was running with state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art customized equipment, and I saw a lot of different pistols through the photographs that they used, mostly things like 1911s. Good.
Murder Hornet says, if I got my booty took, I'd be a rattlesnake too. Yeah, I'm sure most people would. Camp Guy says, lots of killers were abused in juvenile jails when they were kids. That's true. Albert Fish comes to mind as one that was horribly abused. Right. Yeah, you can't treat people like that, particularly as children, like during formative years up until like the teenage years. You can't treat people like that and expect them to come out okay.
Yeah.
You just can't. Some of them will. But, and like I said, I'm not excusing like serial killers because a lot of them were abused as children, but that's just treat everybody nice, Jesus Christ. You don't like it, especially like kids and teenagers, for Christ's sake.
And you would think in that era a lot of straight guys got raped in those kind of prisons.
They probably did.
And they took it okay, shook it off. But I think because Barrow was bisexual, he took more offense, I think. It meant more. Be like kind of like raping a woman. They get more pissed over it. But Panzram grew up in that environment. He was just a sex demon, the ultimate fucking leather daddy of death. He hated men, but he was attracted to them. Weird. Had no interest in women. Strange.
Well, that might have been part of his problem too, because I kind of feel like maybe it wasn't as acceptable. Like you couldn't really maybe because I kind of feel like there was a lot of particularly before. Being gay was acceptable. If you felt that way, you felt like there was something wrong with you, so there was a lot of self-hatred going on. Yeah. Which might have, in a certain type of personality, might have manifested in a particularly murderous kind of way. Yeah, because
if you ask me, I think Panzram was gay, too.
But he hated that
He hated that, right, yeah. And he had been raped, so he was going to rape everybody else.
Because it's a power thing. This was done to me and you made me feel like a victim, and they didn't like that.
Right. If you could rape a straight guy and then he turns into a sex monster where he goes to rape, then there'd be a shit ton of them. Because there was probably a shit ton of straight guys that got raped. But they don't end up doing that.
Well, it has to be, as I said, it's always like nature and nurture.
Yeah.
It's only probably gonna be a small percentage of people that are gonna lash out in the way that a serial killer would, or a particularly egregious criminal would. But I'm just saying you never know who's going to act out like that later, so just like don't do that to anybody.
In Panzram's case, though, because he had no interest in women and had no female victims, he was gay. He was gay, and he was a rapist and a sadist and a murderer.
So I always kind of wonder, one of the fascinating things to me about like serial killers or, you know, people that end up doing shit like this is kind of like, had they been born in a different era, would they have turned out okay? Like, maybe not okay, but would they have not been a serial killer?
Maybe. Yeah, probably not. Yeah. I think it's right place, right time. Wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like it's not just the person. It's not just, there's some people that are genetically predisposed to be that particular way.
Yeah.
But I think there has to be, like, a confluence of factors, and a lot of those are, like, societal. Like, would either, like, just in their family, like their immediate family, or in society at large. So, you know, I kind of feel like had some people been born in a different era, then, you know, you know, we talked about this when we talked about Jeffrey Dahmer, for example. It's like, had Jeffrey Dahmer been born into a different family or been born later, do I think he would have been a serial killer? Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, I don't know. You know, we can't run that experiment, obviously, but... So, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. It's always kind of like, it has to be that person at that time in that societal, you know, kind of framework that shit's going to turn out that way. Had it been a different time and place, maybe not. It might not have worked out like that. So, yeah. So, after he gets out of prison, Clyde, in 1932, him and his friend Ralph, who had been an inmate and also got out, they started doing all these robberies, as I mentioned, mostly like just little shit, gas stations, stores, stuff like that. Their whole goal during this time period was like, we're going to rob all these places and we're going to get enough money so we can buy some guns, and we're going to go back to Eastham Prison Farm and we're going to fuck it up. We're going to like let all the prisoners out. We're going to like kill the guards. We're going to do that. So they wanted to do like a raid. So that's kind of like what their initial goal was. Now, while they were doing, because Bonnie was helping them at the time too, like on these robberies. So April 19th of that year, which was 1932, Ralph and Bonnie actually they were trying to rob a hardware store in Kaufman, and they were going to like steal some guns, and they both got arrested, but Clyde didn't. Now, Bonnie got released after a couple months. She didn't get indicted. Now, Ralph got tried and convicted and served some time, and after that, like, just drifted away from the gang and, like, never rejoined. Now, while Bonnie was in prison, like, for the few months she was in for this particular job, she kind of, like, you know, wrote a bunch of poems and stuff like that. Like, you can look up, like, a lot of her poems are, like, kind of famous. And she got out, and then Clyde was waiting there for her, so... You know, they kind of hooked back up a couple weeks after she got out. Now, there was another robbery in Hillsborough. This was April 30th, 1932. Now, this particular robbery, according to most reports that I saw, the owner of the store, who was a guy named J.N. Booker, I guess, he got shot and killed. Now, even though... the victim's wife identified Clyde from police photographs as one of the people that had shot her husband. Most reports say that Clyde was still in the car, that it was the other people that were in the... So they don't really know if Clyde, like, actually shot the dude. They think he was just, like, the getaway driver. But he still got blamed because he was kind of the one that was... more well-known, I guess. But, like, the other two people, like, you know, they were probably the ones that did it. So, not too long after that, like a couple months later, Clyde and a couple other dudes are in this place in Oklahoma, like, drinking. And then there's a sheriff named Sheriff Maxwell and a Deputy Moore. And the two cops... come up to them, like, in the parking lot, because I guess, like, they recognize them because of this whole, like, guy that they had shot back in April. And I guess Clyde and the gang were not having it, and so they started shooting. So basically, Moore got killed, and Maxwell was wounded. So this was actually the first cop that he had killed. Now, there was another incident in October of that year where there was supposedly this robbery in Sherman, Texas, although I think that maybe that was other people. I think that just got, like, attributed to them later on. Now, here's this other dude named W.D. Jones. He was like a teenager. Now, he had known Clyde's family since they were all kids. And he ended up joining the gang when he was 16 years old, Christmas 1932. And the three of them ended up leaving Dallas. And the next day, which was Christmas Day of 1932, Jones and Clyde ended up murdering another dude, and he wasn't a cop. It was a guy named Doyle Johnson. Now, they were stealing his car, and they killed him in the course of stealing his car in Temple, Texas. Later on, Clyde killed a guy named Malcolm Davis, who was Tarrant County deputy. That was January 1933. And then that was when he, Bonnie, and W.D. Jones, they had kind of gone into a police trap, which had not been set for them, but was set for... Ooh, I knew this was gonna happen.
Take your time. It's okay.
I knew this was gonna happen.
Damn. Throat hurting, yeah?
When I get a cold,
Yeah.
and then it goes away,
Yeah.
a lot of times, like, it'll just, like, my throat will tickle,
Okay.
like, for a couple weeks afterward, and it'll be, like... So if I try to talk for a long time, like, I'll have, like, a coughing fit. So I was hoping it wouldn't do it on the show, but, sorry.
It'll be all right.
Yeah, probably.
Now it's time for a super chat, people. Go ahead and...
For Jenny's medical care.
Yeah, for Jenny's medical fucking...
For Jenny's medical care. But yeah, so there had been a police trap set for some other random criminal, and apparently Clyde and Bonnie and WD, like, wandered into it without knowing, so they kind of, like, had to shoot their way out. So they ended up shooting another cop. So, 1933. In March of 1933, Clyde's older brother, Buck, who had been in prison for some other shit, because, like I said, they had done some more shit earlier on. But he got out. Now, he had a wife named Blanche. And him and Blanche, like, moved in with Bonnie and Clyde and W.D. Jones. They were kind of, like, in this sort of hideout in Joplin, Missouri, this house. Now, apparently, I don't know. I think that maybe Buck and Blanche, at first, were kind of, like, telling Clyde, hey, maybe you should turn yourself in. But I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. The thing about it, though, was this house, which was their hideout, they weren't really, like, seeming to make much of an effort to, like, keep on the DL. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They were kind of, like, they would, like, do these big card games. They would, like, they were really loud. They would, like, fire guns accidentally or on purpose, like, into the street. They would do shit like that. Blanche said in her diaries, which they found later on, because, like, a friend of hers had them, said they bought a case of beer a day. And the guys would, like, come and go at all hours. Like I said, they would shoot the guns in the apartment while they were cleaning. Ooh, whoops, it went off. It was shit like that.
Yeah.
Now, the neighbors, because they had neighbors, they were kind of too scared to go over there. But one of them, or one or more of them, like, called the cops and was like, what the fuck is going on over there? Like, they're just making all this
Shooting
noise.
guns in the apartment.
Shooting guns in the apartment. It's
Yeah.
like, we think maybe there's, like, some nefarious shit going on.
I used to do it, but we'll talk about it later. You just gotta know what you're doing. You gotta make a good fucking bat. You gotta make a good
really?
bullet stop. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No big calibers, little calibers.
I mean, come on now.
yeah.
Don't shoot your BAR inside the house.
No. BAR, that's fucking too much.
He
yeah.
says it was accidental
Right.
while he was cleaning it. I was just cleaning it.
He's lying.
He was probably drunk.
Yeah, he's like, pa, 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 pa. Oh!
Well, oh damn, we have neighbors.
Yeah, it's just loud.
I
man.
forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they call the cops. Now the cops didn't know, and like I said, they weren't like Bonnie and Clyde at this point. They were kind of known, but they weren't like famous.
Yeah.
So the cops at this point, they didn't know that it was them, like it was the Barrow gang. They thought it was bootleggers, which, like I said, this was during like Prohibition still.
Yeah.
So if you were drinking, you'd be in trouble. Like we would be in trouble, like right now, is what I'm saying. If somebody knew we were drinking in here, like back at this time.
Yeah.
So the cops get together, this like 5 guys in 2 cars, and they kind of like drive to this house because they think, oh shit, there's like bootleggers. We're gonna like bust them. Now the cops get there, and Clyde and his brother, Buck, and W.D. Jones just started shooting. Because, you know, cops. They're coming to get us. Like I said, Clyde said it, I'm not being taken alive.
Yeah.
So they just started shooting. So they actually ended up killing Detective Harry L. McGinnis outright, fatally wounding another, Constable J.W. Harriman. Bonnie also opened fire with a BAR as the others ran away. And then, like, one of the other cops, like, kind of ducked behind a tree, like, to keep from getting shot. So basically, like, he kind of got, like, some wood splinters into his face.
I think
like,
that's
from
I think that's the one where Bonnie actually made one of her best shots in that one. You didn't collect the actual details about where they were and what the ranges were in that one, did you?
No.
Okay, all right. Just see, because the source that I remember reading, I think it was something where they were getting ready to be apprehended, and they shot their way out of it from an apartment. And it sounds like that same situation there. And that shot that they talk about that she took was on the move from the hip. She was moving. That's what I mean by on the move. And she was shooting at a running cop who was shooting at her at the same time. And I think it was 75 yards.
It might have been because I think she was running toward the car because they were trying to like get the fuck out of there. And he might have been like running like to duck behind the tree.
Behind a tree or something, taking cover. And it was like, I think it was close to 75 yards if I remember. It's either 50 or 75 yards. When the heat of combat, that's far. Okay? It's not far when you actually look at on paper of what the maximum effective range of these firearms is. But none of that shit on paper that you hear in GunTube on fucking YouTube, none of that shit actually means doesn't mean anything in real life. In real life, it's a fucking contact sport like football, and the time scale you're talking about is seconds. So there's no time to think, no time to act, no time to aim. Everything is instinctive shooting. And if it's the same shooting I remember, they shot their way out of there, and fucking Bonnie had a fucking great instinctive shot on that fucking detective and killed him, crumpled his ass up.
Well, she didn't kill that one. He ducked behind a tree.
He ducked behind a tree? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the wrong incident then. In one incident, she crumpled a fucking guy up, and I think it was at 75 yards while she was running and he was running.
Thank you, Straw Dog.
And she did it from the hip while on the move. So it must have been,
she didn't kill the one she shot at. She hit the tree that he was hiding behind.
Okay.
Because he ducked behind a tree.
It's not the same.
The guy that got killed was either Clyde or Buck.
Okay, so it's not the same engagement.
Actually, they killed 2 guys. They killed 2 cops, like the 2 brothers did.
Right. I saw the play-by-play of every fucking thing that they did and some of the feats that happened in combat. Some of their combat feats off the cuff. Just instinct shooting. And they were good. They were real good. You wouldn't want to go up against them. But you're forced to, that's the nature of law enforcement. You got to take them out. And that was why Frank Hamer did what he did later on. But go ahead.
So they're all running to like try to get back in the car.
Yeah.
Bonnie gets in the car. They had to drive down the street and pick up Blanche, who was Buck's wife, because she had a little dog named Snowball that had run away, like, during all the fighting and was, like, running down the street. So she was chasing the dog. She's like, I have to get Snowball back. Which, like I said, I feel that. You gotta go get your pet. Although I don't think that she found him. I think he just ran away. He was like, fuck this shit.
Fuck this shit. I'm not about firefighting.
I'm not about firefighting. I'm just gonna go find another family that's, like, less stressful. Like, go Snowball.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, but she was chased, so they had to, like, pick her up, like, on the way. Now, the officers that survived said that they had fired 14 rounds during this firefight. One actually hit W.D. Jones, the teenager, in the side. One hit Clyde, but actually ended up hitting one of the buttons on his coat and, like, bounced off. One just kind of grazed Buck, who was Clyde's older brother, and then ricocheted off the wall.
Okay, now I'm going to say something about this.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
A round hitting your button and bouncing off, I'm going to call direct bullshit on that. They probably thought that happened, but that couldn't have happened. The agents would have been carrying something like 45 ACP, 38 Super, 38 Special. Those were the main ones. 38 Super, actually, that was the new one that came out. So that would have been a top dog caliber. Or 32 ACP. Okay? Which would have been the weakest. A lot of dudes carried 32. 32 ACP was the 9mm Parabellum of its era. That was kind of like the super gun caliber. But 32 is weak. This is to the gun guys. Even 32 ACP would penetrate something like a metal button. It would go right through it. So that's got to be an error there. The weakest caliber they had would not have been deflected by a button on somebody's jacket. It must have been a bullet fragment. It's got to be. Bullet fragment is a fucking round comes in, it hits something, and it fucking splatters, it shatters. You know, it splatters. Maybe it's fucking 38 Special, and it doesn't have a jacket on the bullet, and the fucking lead comes and hits the fucking it splatters, it fragments, and the fucking lead comes and hits his fucking button, and he goes, oh man, my button absorbed the round. But no, I know better. I understand ballistics too much and know what they do. Even the weakest thing they had would not have been stopped by somebody's button. Not a direct hit. It had to have been a ricochet or a lead splatter off a 38 Special. It had to have been. Go ahead.
So I kind of feel like this particular shootout was the thing that sort of made them, like, nationwide news. Not just because they'd killed a couple cops, but because they were forced to flee from their apartment, obviously. Yeah. They left all their shit behind. One of the things they left behind was their camera. And this camera had a whole bunch of rolls of undeveloped film in it, and the cops developed all the film. And from these rolls of film came the infamous photographs.
Straw Dog sent us $10. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know. I got that a long time ago.
Okay.
I got that a long time ago.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Jenny's
Sean,
on top of.
Yeah. You just, well, that's what happens when you don't listen to, like, what I say. I got it, like, a long time ago. But yeah, so I kind of feel like, I don't know. Like I said, I think they still would have been famous, but the fact that they found these photographs and had them developed, and then, like, the media got hold of them and published them, it kind of made them, like, a nationwide sensation. Particularly that one, that very famous, iconic photo of Bonnie, like, kind of with her leg cocked up on the car with the cigar and the gun and everything like that. So everybody was just kind of, like, enraptured by, like, this whole situation. So, yeah. Front page news. Now, over the next little while, like the next 3 months or so, the gang starts kind of going from Texas. They're going, like, all through the, like, the middle part of the United States. Like, they went as far north as Minnesota. They're just, like, all over the place. Now, they tried to rob a bank in Indiana, and then they robbed another bank in Minnesota. At this particular one, they kidnapped a couple people. No, this was later. This was in Louisiana. They kidnapped a couple people when they were stealing someone's car. And so basically, they did kidnap some people, like cops or people that they were trying to steal their car or whatever. Now, sometimes they would take the people with them for a while, like, as you mentioned, and then they usually wouldn't kill them. They would usually, like, release them, like, several states away from home, but they would give them some money and be like, hey, have a good time. Like, get back to where you fucking came from.
Well,
pretty much.
Releasing them several states away meant that you slowed down response time. That's why.
Yeah, true.
They knew what they were doing.
Because, like I said, back in the old days,
Everything
you could
was
just
slow.
like go to like a fucking
Yeah.
you could go to like another fucking state, and it was like the shit never even happened.
Yeah.
It was like totally. It was like going to a different country or like a different planet.
Another planet. Yeah.
No, so I will say, even though they did let people live, they were kind of famous at this time. But, I mean, if you were a cop and you tried to, like, fucking arrest them, they were just gonna shoot you and, like, not fucking think about it. So, a lot of them did. Even though there was kind of, like... I kind of feel like there was a lot of public sympathy toward them, at least at first. But as time went on and sort of like news filtered out about like the murders that they committed, because it wasn't just cops that they killed like regular ass people whose cars they were trying to steal too.
Yeah, if you resisted, they killed you.
Yeah, or like, you know, if they were just like robbing a store and you fucked with them, they would kill you.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of like tipped like public sympathy away from them.
Right.
I mean, I feel like there was they were kind of romanticized at first, but
they were romanticized, but in their defense, everything that I fucking heard or remembered, if you resisted, they killed you. If you scared them, they killed you. If you surrendered, they let you live. All right? And then they'd sometimes abduct you and then let you go after that. So they tried to avoid it. They were criminals. They were criminals. I'm not saying they were good people, if that's the way you want to put it. You know what I mean? But no, if any kind of resistance, any kind of fucking threatening move while they were robbing you, they shot you. And you died.
yeah, they absolutely had no.
They
didn't really have any.
They made it
problems
clear
with doing that.
They made it clear if you lifted a finger against them, they'd kill you. Which that was the philosophy. You surrender immediately. Surrender, you'll be rewarded. Resist, you're killed.
Yeah, that
There were
seemed
no
like
gray
pretty
area.
much. Yeah,
There was no gray area.
yeah, that seemed like pretty much what they lived by.
Right.
So after the photos came out, and they pretty much became known nationwide, like what their faces looked like. And one of the photos, actually a couple of the photos, showed like the license plate on the car and shit like that. So now they were famous all over the country, which made shit a lot harder for them because, you know, they're trying to live on the run and everything like that.
Now the celebrities.
Trying to eat at restaurants and trying to stay at hotels and shit like that. But now a lot of people recognize them, so it's obviously making shit a lot harder. So according to Blanche, who was, Clyde Barra's sister-in-law, who was with them, she was like, during this time, it's like we were just in the car for hours and hours and hours. I mean, they were just literally living on the road. And after they got famous, they couldn't really stop at hotels as often because they were recognized. So it's like they would have to like take baths in streams, and it's like they'd have to do shit like that, or like cook over. They'd have to like camp out in the woods and crap like that. And they said we were in the car together for like hours and hours and hours at a time, and so like everybody was getting like really cranky, like having to deal with one another. So there was that. So like it wasn't glamorous at all. Like everybody was just in the car sniping at one another. They were all stinky. They couldn't stop anywhere because they'd be recognized, and so they started like fighting. There was all kind of shit like that. So I think like a couple of them like even like took off at some point. So you're like, look, I can't deal with this anymore. So there was that kind of shit too. Now, what ended up happening? Somebody mentioned earlier like that that Bonnie had like an injury to her leg. This is where this happened. This is June 10th.
Yeah, it wasn't. Somebody said that it was some kind of a fucking congenital defect. I don't think it was a congenital.
No.
It was
She
a
was
wound.
fine. No, yeah. And this is where it happened. It happened while they were on the run. This was in 1932, I think. June 10th. Now they're driving. Clyde was driving. And there was a bridge under construction. Clyde didn't see the sign. and he flipped the car into a ravine. Now, they don't know, like, some accounts say the car caught fire. Some accounts say that the car's battery, like the acid came out of the car's battery, like into the floorboards or whatever. Whatever happened, Bonnie's leg was fucked up. Third-degree burns to her right leg, pretty much from her hip to her ankle. So severe that the muscles contracted and caused the leg to, like, kind of, like, drop like that. W.D. Jones, who was with them at the time, was a teenager, said, this is a quote, she'd been burned so bad, none of us thought she was going to live. The hide on her right leg was gone. From her hip down to her ankle, I could see the bone in places.
Damn. I didn't realize it was that bad.
So, yeah, it was fucked up.
Now, some people might say, well, how the hell do you wreck a car? Okay, those old cars that they drove, they weren't very fast, but they were heavy. They were heavy in comparison to the amount of power you had. And no hydraulic brakes. They were mechanical brakes. It took a long time to slow one down. The steering was shit. And another thing is no paved roads. We're talking about dirt roads. So once you got that thing up moving, 35, 40 miles an hour, hard to keep it under control. And if you try to stop it, especially during a turn, now you can roll it easily. Those things fucking handled for shit. They not modern cars. Glorified buggy. A glorified horse buggy. With a bunch of weight on it. So yeah, easy to fuck up. Easy to wreck.
Yeah, and it did wreck. And she got super fucked up.
So narrow tires on them. Mechanical steering. They were rough. Go ahead.
So after this, she basically just had to hop around on one leg, or Clyde had to carry her.
Yeah.
Which is not super convenient when you're, like, on the run from the law, like, 24/7. Now, they did have kind of a local family on a farm that sort of helped them, like, you know, for a short time. Then they ended up kidnapping 2 other cops, which was County Sheriff George Corey and City Marshal Paul Hardy. They didn't kill them. They left them actually, like, handcuffed to a tree. That was in Oklahoma. And then they met back up with Buck and Blanche. And then they hid in this place, which was like a tourist camp type place. And they were kind of like trying to fix... I mean, because obviously they couldn't take Bonnie to a hospital because everybody knew who they were. At this point, Buck and W.D. Jones went to do another robbery and ended up murdering another cop, a town marshal named Henry D. Humphrey. That was in Arkansas. And so they had to go on the run again, even though Bonnie could barely walk. So July of 1933, they end up checking into this kind of like tourist court, like, or I guess it was kind of like a resort camp or something like that in Missouri. So these are like 2 kind of cabins, but I don't know if they were like cabins. They were like brick. And then there were like garages in the middle. So they rented both of the cabins. Now, next to this was like a tavern or a restaurant. And this restaurant was kind of a hangout for a lot of like Missouri cops or like the highway patrol guys. And I will say that at this point, it really doesn't seem like, even though you would think that they'd be like, oh shit, there's like cops right there, they didn't really seem to be like all that worried about there being like cops right there. Because basically, Blanche went in to kind of like, you know, secure the cabins. And she says, okay, there's 3 people. But then, like, the guy that owns the place is like, well, obviously, like, 5 people just got out of the car, so that's, like, super sketch. Also, he noticed that, like, they backed the car into the garage. Like, they backed it in there. They're like, and he even called it gangster style. Like, oh, in case we need to, like, get out of, you know. I guess he'd seen a lot of shit. But, yeah, so it's, like, just, like, they needed to get away real quick. Another thing that he thought was weird was that Blanche, who was the only one that came in, she paid for the rooms in coins, which was weird even for back then. And when they went to the restaurant later and the bar, like, they ordered, like, food and drinks and stuff like that, they also paid for that with coins, which stuck out. So they weren't really trying to, like, keep it on the down low. I mean, they were doing, like, suspicious shit. I don't know if they realized it was suspicious, but everybody knew it was suspicious. Also, another thing that they did that was super suspicious that the owner of the place noticed was that they had, like, taped newspaper over the windows of the cabin. So, again, that seems a little sketchy. So, yeah. And the way that Blanche looked in particular, because, like I said, this was 1930s, not super, super common for women to be wearing pants, and not super common for women to be wearing, like, riding breeches, just in a regular context. So the fact that Blanche was going around wearing riding breeches was also, like, very suspicious. So a lot of people, like, remembered them, like, when they saw them, like, walking around. So because of that, like, the owner kind of goes into the restaurant next door and is like, hey, there's a lot of weirdos, like, staying over there. Maybe you want to, like, check that out. Another thing that didn't help was that Clyde and W.D. Jones, they go into town to get, like, some food, and they also got, like, some bandages and some stuff to put on Bonnie's leg, which is all fucked up. Now, because the cops had been thinking ahead, they said, okay, well, obviously, they knew that Bonnie's leg had been fucked up, so they said and that she couldn't go to the hospital, so they're like, okay, well, they told, like, pharmacists and stuff like that in the area, hey, like, why don't you look out for somebody that's, like, that's looking for these particular things, because it would be suspicious. So the pharmacist in this particular town was like, hey, there's, like, all these people, and these guys just came in and bought this stuff that you said about. So the upshot of that was that the cabins were put under surveillance by the local police. So they ended up getting, like, a bunch of reinforcements from Kansas City. They got an armored car. They got, like, all kind of stuff. So they said, we're going to, like, fucking close in on them because we know that it's probably them. And so they got all this backup. What happened? Oh, I thought you, like... I heard something like you tripped or some shit like that. So they said, okay, well, we're going to get all this backup. We're going to do this shit. We're going to, like, ambush them. So they kind of get all these cops, and they're going to go. It's, like, 11 o'clock at night, and they're going to go, and they're going to, like, fucking stalk the cabins. They got Thompson submachine guns. They're fucking ready. So they go in there, and there's a big fucking gunfight. Now, it turned out that the cops, again, outgunned. Clyde, again, had stolen... another BAR from the National Guard Armory in Oklahoma. He had just stolen it July 7th. And so he pretty much, like I said, like, outgunned the cops. Now, what ended up happening, this is, like, kind of like a fucking farce right here. A bullet, I don't know whose bullet it was, but some bullet during the gunfight ended up short-circuiting the horn on the armored car, and the cops heard that and thought that it was a signal for them to cease fire, so they did. So the gang were like, okay, lucky us, and they all piled in the vehicle and got the fuck out of there. And for whatever reason, the cops didn't follow them. So, you know, so there was that. Now, during the gunfight, though, Buck, Clyde's older brother, had got a pretty bad gunshot wound. The gun had essentially, like, blown off part of his skull, with, like, at his forehead, and his brain was exposed.
Wait a minute, hold on.
But the bitch was still alive and, like, talking and acting relatively normal.
Somebody shot him and it did that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, during a firefight, yeah.
Okay.
So his head was kind of blown off, but he was still,
Right.
like, walking around. Blanche... she'd actually, like, the gunfire had, like, broken a bunch of glass, and it had gone, like, in a bunch of her, in her eyes. So she was kind of, like, blinded, or mostly blinded. So, yeah, so she was fucked up, too. So there was that.
That was 45 that did that. 45 ACP was known for that kind of shit. With headshots. Kind of more like a smashing... Low velocity.
Can you imagine being
mass.
like walking around with your just fucking brain like pulsing out like that? Like,
Well,
it's like, can you put like a fucking patch over that or something.
Probably came in
That's
on an
disturbing.
angle and knocked a big fucking hunk of the bone off.
That's kind of what I was picturing.
It's probably what happened. It's heavy and it's slow.
It did like blow a portion of his skull out of his.
Yeah. It didn't
out
go
of his
through
forehead.
him. It
didn't go through. Yeah.
clipped him.
It glanced off, but glanced enough to like knock part of his skull off.
Knock part of the
and
fucking
have his
bone
little
off.
brain sticking out.
Yeah.
But he could still like walk around and talk and shit.
Yeah. Well, shit, you don't need that. You don't need a brain.
Just put some duct tape over that. It'll be fine.
Fucking patch it up.
They didn't have duct tape back then, I don't think.
Well, as long as there's like a plastic wrap over the fucking top of it holding the fluid in. If that shit's intact, you can be okay. You just gotta worry about infection.
Yeah, you can't have your brain like just open to the fucking
Right.
air.
Get
Jesus
infected, you
Christ.
get brain
Who knows
rot.
what'll like fucking crawl in there.
Yeah.
Christ.
If you have antibiotics, you patch it up. Fucking put a plate in there. Fucking, you can fix it up.
Well, yeah, they can fix it nowadays. But
Yeah.
like I said, if you're in a criminal gang who the cops are after,
Yeah,
then,
you probably know how to do that.
you can't go to the hospital
Yeah.
because you'll get caught.
Right.
Then yeah.
Yeah. Did they have antibiotics? They had them in the 30s, I think, didn't they? Antibiotics
Ooh.
came from the 20s, didn't it?
Yeah, when was like Louis Pasteur and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff? Yeah, I kind of feel like that was. I don't
Around
know
20.
how like widely disseminated they were
Right.
though at this time period.
When you have a
I
situation
mean, they had
like
them in
that-
World War II, obviously, but
Right.
I kind of feel like prior to that, it was kind of like hit or miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Get a situation like that, you got to patch that bitch up and fucking start giving a whole bunch of antibiotics.
I mean, if that happened to me, I
Sorry.
would like immediately
Yeah.
slap duct tape over that
Yeah.
shit.
Well, if you have fucking piece of sheet metal, you can fucking sterilize that and fucking rivet it or screw it with
What the fuck are you doing?
into the head and try to pull some skin over it.
Oh, what'd you do?
I'm looking at Pookie and she's fucking Pookie. You're freaking me out.
What is she doing?
She's acting like she's getting ready to jump on something.
What happened, Pokey?
What
What
happened,
is
Pokey?
it? Is it a bug?
No. It's not a-
Is she pretending?
She's pretending.
I think she's
You're
pretending that there. Well, she's acting like there's something like that.
No,
she...
she's no.
Oh, okay.
She's fighting the fucking stuffed mouse. She
I
threw it.
couldn't see what it was she was doing, and she was just
No.
like over there, like, "Holy shit, there's a thing!"
Yeah, she's fucking serious about it.
And then she went up like that. And it's a mouse. It's like her
It's a little bit
stuffed
stuffed mouse. It's got it's a white mouse with black stripes on it like a zebra. She fucking throws it.
And then she's like throwing
Yeah.
around, like acting like it's some big. fucking
Yeah,
thing.
she's got a bunch of them, but she likes that white one with the black stripes on it. It gets this visual.
Somebody needs to get rid of this naked HD fun webcam. Yada yada. Who doesn't know how to spell gay?
What's she talking about?
Right here. This.
Oh.
See that?
What's he doing?
It's
Okay,
a troll.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sex bot.
Go ahead and get the sex bot out, people.
I can't do. I don't know why I can't
Right
do
here.
it. I have the 3 dots, but OBS doesn't let me get it. But we have. I mean, Murder Hornet's here. Tammy's here. You guys are mods,
Yeah.
so you can get rid of the peeps. All right. So after this happens, with fucking Buck having have his fucking front of his head blown off, so they go to this like abandoned amusement park in Iowa. This is July 24th. Now Buck, not surprisingly, kind of in and out of consciousness because a big portion of his skull is gone and his brain is sticking out. Like he could still talk and he still ate and stuff, but he had lost a lot of blood and he was, like I said, kind of like falling asleep every now and then. And Clyde and WD were like, yeah, he's gonna die. So they dug him a grave, which that's the spirit.
Was he still? He was still awake.
He was still awake.
Still awake, walking around. You're gonna die.
There's like, hey, we're just gonna
Yeah.
just in case. I mean,
Yeah.
recover, but just in case.
That's
We're
right,
just gonna
Jeffrey.
have that.
Nobody wants a sex bot. Get the sex bots out.
Get the sex box out of here.
Yeah.
Sex box.
Pookie, what are you doing? What are
She's
you doing?
being crazy.
And she's looking all sheepish. All right, I'm not doing anything.
I'm not doing anything. Don't yell at her if she's not
Okay.
doing anything
Come
bad.
here. Come here. Come on the show.
Don't yell at her if she's doing
Come here.
anything bad.
Come here. Come on the show.
She's probably like, why are you
She's
yelling
like,
at
no,
me?
fuck
Daddy?
with me.
Why are you
Okay.
yelling at me?
All right, she's
I'm
okay.
doing my own thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so because they're all walking around all fucked up with like bloody bandages and whatnot, obviously the local residents are like, what the fuck's going on there? Like everybody's walking around with like fucking bloody heads and whatnot. So they figured out pretty quickly who they were. So they called the cops. So at this point, again, a bunch of cops turn up and a bunch of like random ass citizens turn up. And there was again another like fucking gunfight.
Yeah.
Because everyone's shooting at them. Clyde and Bonnie and W.D. Jones ran away. So they got away. Buck, though, got shot in the back. And, he was the one whose head
brain was fucked up,
yeah, whose brain was sticking out. Him and Blanche, his wife, got captured by the cops. Now, Buck did actually end up dying later on. Like, they gave him surgery. He went into surgery, but he had a head wound. He had been shot in the back, and he got pneumonia.
Yeah.
So 5 days after that, so he actually
No antibiotics.
died. Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe...
Yeah.
I don't know if that really
Pneumonia.
would have saved him, but yeah.
Well, pneumonia.
Yeah.
Antibiotics will fix that.
Yeah. It's amazing how
Yeah.
shit that people don't even think about nowadays, like,
You're taking it for granted.
would have killed you back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of shit would have killed people back
Yeah.
then. that
Bonnie and
people
Clyde
don't even
called
think
it,
about.
though. He's going to die. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they probably had to look at the dude. It's like, well, it looks like he's walking around and shit, but
Yeah.
look at the
Yeah,
look at
he
the
know
brain
that.
sickness. It's like that's
Yeah.
not good. That's not good.
Yeah.
I mean, So after that, Bonnie and Clyde and W.D. Jones were kind of running around for the next month and a half. Now they kind of started going farther afield, I guess. They went out as far as Colorado. They went back up to Minnesota for a little while. They went to Mississippi. They were still doing armed robberies the whole time because they still needed money and they still needed guns. They got new guns. They robbed an armory in Illinois in August, and they got 3 new BARs, some handguns, and a big ass cache of ammunition. So, Now, one thing that they did, this is crazy. They would kind of build their itineraries around visiting their families. Because I guess their families, even though I'm imagining their families probably knew what they were up to by this point, I don't know if they were necessarily supportive, yay, go you, but they didn't turn them in. You know what I'm saying? None of their
another
families
time.
did. It was.
And like I said, the general populace was kind of turned against the institutions of the country at that time.
Yeah, everyone was kind
So
of
people are
fuck
like,
with
yeah,
them.
yeah, fuck them. And, well, they're out there robbing and stealing because y'all fucked it up. That was kind of it's like the Old West in a lot of ways. The Old West might have been more peaceful, actually. Because the Old West really wasn't like the Old West when you see it on TV.
Well, I kind of feel like the Old West was a lot more
Laid out and spacious.
yeah. So it's just kind of you didn't get this kind of, because by this point, there were big cities, there was the Industrial Revolution, there was all that, and there was much more widespread poverty, a lot more people living on top of each other, and there was a lot more.
The Old West was more like Jeremiah Johnson. If you ever seen that movie, more kind of like The Unforgiven, and would be another good example. I don't know. That those are 2 good examples. And more like piracy at the high seas. If you're out on the Great Plains with Great Plains Indians and stuff, it was more like being at sea, but you could drink. That's the difference, because there's nothing out there except salt water to drink. But yeah, it's like being at sea. If somebody stole your horse, it was like stealing your boat. You were fucked. There was nothing out there. Grassland. Lucky to find a buffalo.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
shit. Even nowadays, I've seen enough episodes of I Shouldn't Be Alive.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, if you're driving out in the desert and your car breaks down and
You
you
can die
kind of go up,
quickly.
yeah, it really doesn't take long to because I've seen in the modern day,
Yeah.
where people had cell phones and shit like that, still die.
Yeah.
If their car broke down on kind of a lonely road in the desert, because there's nothing around.
Without equipment, training, with no water, storage,
Yeah,
in desert
maybe
temperature.
3 days.
3
max.
days.
3
You got
days.
3
max.
days in the desert, maybe 4. At desert temperatures. Desert will fuck you up. I was deployed in the desert, one of the greatest deserts of all times, out in Egypt. I love the desert. Sinai Desert is beautiful. Like being on Mars. But I had support and I had training and I was young. And had to survive hanging out with the Bedouin. Great people, man. The Middle Easterners, great people, man. Fucking a lot of fucking culture, man. They had their own individual culture. That was back in the 90s. I did my time. I miss it, but I did my time. That was in the past. I imagine that place isn't like that anymore. I think Sharm el Sheikh is fucking built up now. Probably like a big city now. I had to go and look. But, yeah, man. I got some of that old school desert. That old school fucking Egyptian desert. Kind of bring you closer to them builders of the fucking pyramids. I can understand it. Saw all that shit. It was amazing.
So, yeah. So, like I said, they kind of did try to go out of their way to, like, visit their families. Or, like, the families of everybody that was in the gang. Which is kind of nice when you think about it. But maybe not the smartest move, but it's kind of nice. So, they actually went to Dallas in September to see their families. They hadn't seen them in a long time. At this point, W.D. Jones, who, like I said, was kind of a teenager, he said, well, I'm just going to go to Houston. You know, my mom lives there. Now, when he got there, he actually got arrested for his part in the whole thing on November 16th, and he got, transferred back to Dallas. Now, throughout the fall, Clyde committed a whole bunch of robberies with some, like, other people that were sort of local accomplices. He did that. And his family and Bonnie's family took care of her. Because, like I said, her leg was fucked up, so she couldn't really walk. So they were kind of, like, taking care of her, and he was kind of going out, like, stealing money and shit like that. Now, when they were meeting with some family near, I think it was Sowers or Sowers. I'm not really sure. I'm not from Texas, so I don't know. Hey, Pookie's on the show. Yeah. What's up, Pookie? She's like, okay, I'm putting up with it.
Coming up here and fucking chilling out with the fat girl. Why are you so fat?
Shut up. Don't call her that. Don't tell her she's fat. She's not fat. She's not fat. She's like, shut up, Daddy. Well, she doesn't even care what you think. She's just kind of like, fuck you. She's like, deal with it.
You're like a wiener cat.
Aw, yeah, she can't help it.
You're like a wiener
That's
cat.
what Pookie looks like.
Front.
Pookie, you shut up. You're beautiful the way you are.
Yeah.
You're beautiful the way you are.
Jenny's got body positivity about the cats.
I do. Well, why you want to be mean to the kitty?
No, I'm not being mean.
Yeah, you are.
No.
She doesn't care.
Fucking heavy. She's heavy.
She doesn't care anyway.
She's heavy, man. She fucking weighs a lot.
She is like, whatever. This is me.
She beats up Beige.
And Beige does a lot. Well,
Beige is
bigger than her.
But she doesn't weigh anything.
Well, the thing about Beige is that she looks bigger because she's super fluffy.
Yeah, she's not.
But if you get her wet, you can see how much like skinnier she is.
Yeah, Beige is the Paris Hilton of cats. She's
she
just
is.
looking at this tall, skinny kitty.
She just looks big because she's like super, super fluffy.
Right.
She's a ragdoll, actually.
Yeah.
So she has like
ragdoll kitty.
She has big poofy hair.
Yeah.
Like big luxurious.
Yeah.
Fluffy hair.
And she thinks she's just beautiful, more beautiful than anything.
She is beautiful.
She's beautiful, but she just walks around and looks at you and just goes, "I'm beautiful."
I'm beautiful.
Yeah. She's one of
Shut
those.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And like anytime you try to like, and anytime like Pookie will like try to play with her or something like that, she's like, I don't.
She's like, I don't believe this.
I can't even believe this is
You
happening.
are too ugly. Yeah.
I can't believe this is happening right now.
Yeah.
She's like, It's so hilarious. Like when we got, because I mean, you had Beijing like before I met you.
Yeah, Beijing's fucking 12 years old, maybe.
12 or 13, yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was like, I think when I met you, she was like a kitten or a little bit older than a kitten.
Yeah.
And so we had just Beijing for like a long time, and then when we got Pookie, I didn't realize like how different like cats' personalities could be.
Yeah.
They're like completely opposite.
Yeah. Beige does not like Pookie, or at least pretends not to like Pookie.
They kind of hang out sometimes. Yeah. They tolerate each other.
We got to get back to the story. We got to get back to
They tolerate.
We're going down. We're going down a kitty rabbit hole.
I mean, we can do that afterward if you really want to, because I like to talk about kitties. But yeah. So what happened? Where was I? All right. So there were a couple of like other robberies and shit like that. Like I said, Bonnie was at her family and also at Clyde's family. They were like taking care of her leg because their leg was all fucked up and she couldn't go to the hospital, obviously. Now, they were trying to go and meet with family members near Sowers or Sowers. Like I said, I'm not from Texas. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Now, when they were going to do that, I guess somebody got, like, tipped off. So they had some, like, cops, like the Dallas sheriff, whose name was Smoot Schmid, for Christ's sake. What kind of name is that? I mean, no judgment. I'm just asking. What kind of name is that? I never heard that before. But so it was that. It was a couple other cops. And they heard that they were going to be there, so they kind of, like, like, waited in ambush for them. But Clyde, like, drives up to the shit, and he's just kind of like, I kind of like this. I don't feel good about this situation. Like, he somehow, like, knew that this was a trap. And at this point, because I think what happened was that there was, like, a car that was, like, left out, and they were like, hey, maybe Clyde will, like, stop and ask that person, like, what's wrong with them. And he just, like, drove into the situation. He's like, I don't like this. So he basically, he drove past the car that he was supposed to stop and talk at which point the cops just started shooting at the car, right? So now there were other family members in the car. They didn't get hit, thankfully. But what ended up happening was that all the cops, like, shooting at Clyde's car ended up hitting the car and went through the doors. So some of the bullets got Clyde and Bonnie, who was also in the car, like, got them in the legs. Now, this didn't kill them, obviously, or didn't really, like, slow them down all that much, honestly. But they kind of, like, got out of that situation.
Yeah, that's right. Pookie Stick. That's right, Tammy. Pookie Stick. And, yeah, Tila's been gone. Where the fuck has Tila been?
Well, Tila can't always come by because she has, like, work commitments and stuff. Although she didn't say anything earlier, but sometimes she says, oh, I can't come tonight.
No, somebody said Tila popped in not a while ago. Okay, I didn't see that. I didn't see where Tila came in.
I didn't either. I'm, like, way behind in my chat. I'm still at the, like, sex bots.
Yeah.
I haven't got any new chats.
That was a long
the sex
time ago.
bots. Yeah, I know. I don't know why I haven't got any new shit. It doesn't say that I haven't, like, it hasn't shut down enough.
Good.
It says it's still going.
Okay.
I'm still going, right?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, it's just my chat that's behind.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that needs to be answered, like, tell me, because...
Sandra hasn't been around in a long time. She gone. The Germans got her.
Yeah, what happened to Sandra? Did she die? Did she, like, develop a peanut allergy and, like, die from all the peanut butter
all
that
the
we
damn
told her
peanut
to
butter
eat?
got her.
Bless you,
Yeah.
bless you, sweetie. Pookie sneezed. But, yeah. Okay. Now...
Tila was in Hawaii? I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh,
She
shit,
was in
okay.
Hawaii. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, read me any, like, relevant comments. Because, like I said, after sex bots, I don't have any new comments. I don't know why it's not, like, updating. It doesn't say that I shut off or anything like that. But I don't see anything new after that. Okay. So, early 1934. Remember how I said that Clyde, his big dream was to get back at the Eastham prison farm. You know, the place where he had suffered so much abuse. So he actually did a big breakout in January of 1934. So he got, like, a bunch of people out of that prison that night. So it was, like, this whole thing. Now, the raid on the prison, this was, like, a whole, like, the press kind of came down on it. It's like there was a whole bunch of negative publicity. You know, what the fuck? And Clyde, this is what he'd always wanted to do, right? I wanted revenge on the Texas Department of Corrections, and it seemed like he kind of got it. One of the guys that would later join the Barrow Gang, which is a guy named Joe Palmer, he actually shot a guy during the escape named Major Joe Krausen.
Yeah, he busted him out of prison, didn't he?
Yeah. That's what I said. This was like a big prison break.
Yeah.
He went back to the place where he got raped and all that other kind of stuff and busted a bunch of people out.
He hated that prison. He attacked it from the outside.
Yep.
You'd never hear about that today, where a dude does time in a damn fucking penitentiary. And then he goes back and he goes, I'm going to come back and attack that bitch from the outside. Talk about a grudge. Motherfucker was holding a grudge against that place.
Well, like I said,
Attacked it from the outside.
I would
sprung a guy.
submit that maybe that was kind of what... I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't a criminal. He was a criminal before he went there.
They just inflamed it.
A petty criminal.
They inflamed it.
But the fact that he went there and he got treated so horribly, that just made him like an even worse criminal.
Goes back to what I was saying before.
You're making your own monsters. You treat people like that.
There's a certain baseline in criminality that's kind of low, especially when times are good. It's only idiots in there anyway. They don't tend to they get pissed, but then they forget about it. They're kind of low IQ. You start throwing motherfuckers with 130 IQ in prison enough times, 130 IQ or 120 plus IQ all the time, eventually you're going to get one that's going to go like, I'm going to do some crazy shit when I get out of here. And he was springing people out of prison from the outside, attacked prison from the outside. You just don't see that nowadays.
I mean, he was mad.
It was a special breed back then.
He was mad.
It was because they were intelligent and they didn't have anything else to do. Yeah, what else are you going to do?
I mean, they didn't really have any other prospects in life back then.
No.
Like I said, it's
not like they couldn't just move on.
It's not like nowadays it's like, oh, I'll just start a YouTube channel.
Right, yeah. They couldn't move on. Because
what are you going to do?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
You have a criminal record.
Right.
Yeah, that's
actually,
not
they didn't. Having a criminal record back in those days, fortunately, didn't limit them.
Well, that's probably a good thing because a lot of people did have criminal records back then.
It's fairly recent where all of a sudden you got a criminal record, so you can't have a job, you can't fucking buy guns, you lose all your rights.
Well,
that's something from the 70s, late 60s. Actually.
Well, like I said, nowadays, I mean, most people don't have criminal records.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to like, hey, if we're gonna give a job to a person, let's give it to this person that doesn't have a criminal record.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you're not going to commit crimes later, because we hear all the time, it's like, oh, this person, like, didn't have a criminal record, and they went batshit crazy and, like, shot up a school or whatever, but... I
don't believe in criminal records.
It depends on what you did.
Yeah.
It depends on what you did. If it was some bullshit...
Right.
And it depends on how old you were, what the circumstances
depends
were...
Depends on what type of crime it is.
What type of crime it is, yeah.
If you're a sex criminal... They tend to be serial sex offenders because it's part of their it's part of their fucking sexual identity is to go out for little kids or whatever. They're serial rapists or serial killers. That's very different.
Yeah.
So they need to keep track of those guys. But it should be, and this is the way it always was in American society up until recently, you do a crime, you get arrested and convicted, you do time for it. You do your time, and when you come out, you've now paid your debt to society. You get full restoration. You're a citizen again. You can vote. You You do. If you didn't pay for your crime, then you need to be back in fucking prison.
Then don't let them out.
Don't let them out.
Don't let them out.
Right. This whole thing about, well, you're a felon and you can't have... Nah. That was a huge mistake.
Because you're just encouraging people to go back to prison, because if you get out, it's like, well, I can't get a job.
There's no redemption.
I can't get a job because I have a criminal record.
Exactly.
So like, well, shit, I might as well go back to being a criminal.
That's right. You're creating a criminal class because there's no redemption. There's no path back to normal citizenship. You're never qualified to have the full rights of a citizen.
Sure.
Totally against human rights. Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
If you committed a crime, do not let that motherfucker out until he's paid his price, paid his debt to society.
And like I said, we're talking about, like, it depends on what kind of crime it is. Depends on what kind of crime.
Some guys will never get released. Some guys will get released after 50, 60 years when they're old men. Okay? He's paid. He can have full restoration of rights.
Yeah.
It's just that they have fucked the criminal justice system up fucking terribly.
I mean, I'm a big fan. Like, look, if you just have, like, non-violent kind of stuff, like, look, I just, like, stole some shit. Like, they didn't hurt anybody. They just, like, stole somebody's bike off the street or some shit like that. Yeah, you should pay. But
there it is. Right.
Don't let that, like, dog them their whole entire life. Because you're just encouraging people to, like, go deeper into, like, criminality.
If you look at statistics, the only ones that you have to watch are sex offenders. Sex offenders of a certain...
But, like, violent offenders.
Yeah.
Of any kind.
Well, no, because guys...
depending on...
Guys get in fights, guys fucking start dueling each other, and it's a one-time thing. It doesn't happen again.
That's different.
It's different. All right.
That's different. If you're just, like, drunk and you get in a fight...
Right.
That's not the same.
The sex offenders of a certain type are serial sex offenders. That's who they have to fucking watch for. You know what I mean? Serial rapists, serial fucking child rapists. That's who they have to. Serial fucking killers. That's the main threat. The rest of those guys, they can be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. You rob a fucking bank, you do 15 years. You know what I mean? You come out, you paid for it. If he hasn't paid for it, then keep him back in there for another 5-10 years.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's the whole point.
That's the point of fucking prison.
If you're punishing him, Then once you get out,
you're free. Yeah.
Then you should be free. But you're not, though, because you still have the record.
Right. And they shouldn't do that.
Like I said, depending on... Yeah.
You can have the record, but the record is only the police and the courts know about that. That's nobody else's business.
It shouldn't be like public knowledge.
No, that's nobody else's business. And that's the way it always was. But,
and like I said, shit like that, especially like non-violent crimes.
Yeah.
You know, if you did like non-violent crimes, like I said, especially like drug-related shit or just like bullshit kind of crimes.
Yeah.
I don't really think everybody should be knowing about that.
The reason why I'm saying that if you do the crime, you do the time, and you're free. You go back to the 1800s and early 1900s. A lot of some of the best lawmen out there were ex-convicts. Just because you did time doesn't mean you couldn't be a cop. If you trust the guy, if you're a sheriff and you trust the guy, you go, I'm gonna make you a cop. You're gonna catch bank robbers. Let him catch bank robbers. He knows what it's like. He was a bank robber.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy you need. You need a Boba Fett. You know?
Well, Ned Kelly even said that he was like, he was using it as an insult. He's like, cops, like, to be a cop, you have to, like, know how criminals think. So they were probably, like, criminals to begin with.
Exactly.
But like I said, sometimes people that did some crimes when they were younger,
they're not like that later on.
And then when they get older, sometimes they might make better cops because they know they've been there.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Not only that, one of the baddest fucking gunfighters of all times, the motherfucker who they said shot a man for snoring, was John Wesley Arden. And when he got out of prison, he became a lawyer. And he didn't commit any crimes after that. He was a celebrity. He's a lawyer. You know?
Yeah.
So people can change. And he didn't shoot a man for snoring. That's not what happened.
Yeah, that's an urban legend.
That's just what they said. He was drunk in a fucking hotel room, and the dude in the room next to him was snoring his ass off, and he shot a fucking pistol off into the round while he was drunk to wake him up.
I get that.
Yeah, to wake him up, and then he went back to sleep. And then he woke up in the morning, they were waking him up, accusing him of murder. He hit that dude with a bullet and killed him.
He's like, look, I was drunk, and it was just loud, and I was trying to sleep. Like I said, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Had it been murder, he would have run. He didn't run. He just stayed there. He was drunk, shot the wall. He did a bunch of shit. Fucking shot a lot of dudes in basically duels. It came out as self-defense because they wanted to kill him. He was a fucking badass gunfighter. They kept coming at him, trying to kill him. But was he a criminal? Yeah, he was an outlaw. He was an outlaw. He was. John Wesley, he was an outlaw. But he didn't really... I don't think he was a thief. You know? He was more like a serial gunfighter. They kept fucking with him. And he was good. Now, some people go, well, you can't have that everywhere. This is fucking civilization. No, it isn't. This isn't civilization. Not in the United States. And you already have that. It's just that they get picked up faster. And it's a lot more complicated now. But you have that kind of guy everywhere here. And you always will.
Like I said, you always have to take everything, and I know that we don't really have the resources and blah, 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 but it's like you really have to kind of take everything on a case-by-case basis.
It was case-by-case shit.
Because you don't really know if that person that you picked up, like, is this person really going to be a threat, like, going forward? Probably not most of the time. I mean, you never know, though.
Yeah.
Because there's always that one case where, oh, we picked up this dude and blah, 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 and then we released him, and then he murdered people, like, later on. But, you know, there's always going to be shit like that because it's imperfect. But
freedom is dangerous. It's just how it is.
It is.
There's all kinds of fucking... Because it's risk. That's just how it is. If you want safety, then if you want true safety, then what you're talking about is a totalitarian situation, a totalitarian government that fucking controls every bit of your activity. That's a maximum security prison. You don't want to live in that. You don't want to live in that. You can go down the hood today. There's shit happening in the hood, shootings and shit, to where you go, man, 3 people were killed in the hood. We're not sure who did it. If you were there and saw how it went down, you'd probably understand it. Go, yeah, that's how that shit went down. I'd let that good dude go. It's just more like Law of the Jungle. They might have been fucking with that dude, and he knew who they were, and it was a long-standing fucking feud between dudes who were all kind of bad, and it was just a bunch of 3 bad guys trying to kill another bad guy. He defended himself and ran. That's a lot of it. And it's just that it'll never show up in court because they were involved in the drug trade. But you said, well, we can't have that. That's more control freak shit. That's none of your business. All right. It's between bad guys. They're sorting it out. What the fuck does a court care about that?
And to be honest, like I said, if they legalized a lot of
drugs, it would go away.
Legalized or at least decriminalized.
Right. It needs to be
a lot of that would go away.
It would just go away.
A lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of the gun crime would just go away. All right.
Because there wouldn't be any
no reason for it. And the DEA said this way back on the war against drugs. There never should have been a war against drugs. You guys know who I am if you're new to the show. Fucking, I'm a veteran. Fucking served during times of fucking 2 wars. They were all bullshit. Okay. America loves fucking jumping into wars because they make a lot of money on it. One of the biggest mistakes was the fucking war on drugs. And my mother was a DEA agent. Knew everything about. I know all about the DEA and fucking everything that they fucking did. She's DEA and State Department. My fucking family is fucking deep in the government. Bullshit. Total bullshit. They should have just taken, and they got good advice from the fucking DEA back in the 80s. They said, don't crack down hard on on cocaine and crack. Control it like alcohol, and it'll be all right. But no, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to make a whole industry on getting cops killed and making drug dealers rich. That's all it did.
Well, and getting innocent bystanders killed
innocent bystanders killed. That's all it was. And then they pretended that it had something to do with morality. It never did. Because those same politicians in the fucking Congress that voted for the war on drugs invested in drugs so they could make money on it. They were crooked as fuck. Yeah. And some of them ended up being presidents. The Bushes and the Clintons were involved in that. Yeah. They made a lot of money on that.
Well, like I said, anytime prohibition.
Prohibition,
the biggest
same thing.
It's the same kind of thing.
Same fucking thing. They should have made that shit just like alcohol and controlled it. And
as long as it's.
Some people were like, well, how can you control cocaine and heroin like alcohol?
It's no different.
It's no different. There were people 100 years ago saying, how could you make alcohol legal? Oh, the world would end. No, and it's just booze. It's just booze.
I mean, yeah, it fucks people up. Obviously, we're doing this show right now, and we're like kind of tanked.
We're fucked up.
But we're not driving. We're not going anywhere.
And there's no drug cartel getting fucking rich off of our drinking, and they're not murdering cops and murdering innocent people to give us that alcohol.
Right.
And that's all that's happening with the drug trade.
And to be honest, like I said, I'm kind of like...
Stupid.
Look, whatever you want to do with your body. You want to drink... You want to take heroin. Exactly. You want as long as you're not driving, as long as you're not endangering other people.
Right.
Like, if you have a baby that you're not feeding, because obviously that should be taken away from you.
Right.
But if it's just you, then I don't really feel like I have any right to infringe upon that.
It's anti-American.
I don't feel like I have
it is anti-American to illegalize those drugs in the way that they did it. Cowboys in the Old West, they had access to fucking morphine, cocaine. They had access to all that. It was called right to bliss. Ain't that some shit?
The weird thing about it is that I feel like...
They weren't hurting other people over that.
Well, yeah, and like when I was in the UK, like in the 90s and 2000s, and I kind of feel like most of Europe, they kind of got their shit together on that issue. They're like, look... the drugs aren't legal, but they're decriminalized.
Right.
Like if you kind of like, if you were like a heroin addict, for example, they wouldn't like put you in jail. They wouldn't do nothing like that. They're like, well, we'll put you on methadone. You'll be on a program. We'll like watch you and shit like that. But they weren't like gonna like criminalize it.
I think they should be legal.
And it was working out a lot better.
I think they should be legal, just like alcohol, but controlled. And then there has to be an understanding among, there has to be education to the young people that these are addictive. If you get involved in this, you're not.
Yeah, it's like it'll happen, like this,
this'll
that,
happen,
and
this'll
just
happen.
like they do with alcohol or
And
cigarettes or
and
anything like
right,
that.
Exactly.
It
That's it.
It should just be exactly like that
Right.
because it's essentially the same
Right.
thing.
And then
it's essentially
once
the
the
same.
corporations are involved, once the corporations are involved, the profit margins will be tiny. So drug cartels will vanish. It'll just be corporations. They'll be selling it, and it'll be good quality stuff. The prices will be low, and people will treat it like they do alcohol. I take this, I can't drive.
Well, that's what I mean. I kind of
That's
feel
all it
like,
is.
I mean, nobody is like
Right.
killing each other
Over that
over
bullshit.
booze
Right,
because
yeah.
it's legal.
Right, but they did back in the fucking
But they,
20s.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Well, that's kind of where
That's
the whole
where all this shit
gangster
come-
thing came.
right,
That's
yeah.
what I'm talking about. If you take stuff like that, look, as long as you make an effort to inform the public, look, this is what this is what it does.
Right.
You're not allowed to drive on it. You're not allowed to do this, that, and the other. Like, look, if you have a kid and you don't feed it because you're on heroin or whatever, yeah, we'll take your kid away. Like, there are consequences, but we don't criminalize it. We're going to put
Right.
people in jail
Right.
and shit like that because I kind of feel like that's, like, what is the point of that? It's not a
Yeah.
violent crime.
And
It's
after,
just,
and after a generation or two, there will be no interest in any of those drugs.
yeah.
When I was in Brazil, there was no real drinking age. You didn't have. I drank at 14 or 15 down there, but I wasn't driving. And you get bored with it real quick because nobody's stopping you. There's no glamour.
Well, yeah,
There's
the
no
thing
glamour
about
to
it is that, and
they're
this
drinking
is,
at the dinner table, wine and stuff.
well,
you know,
that's
it's
it.
just-
Kind of happened in
Yeah.
Europe, like in France
Yeah.
and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
kids are like drinking wine like from
Yeah.
a young age. It's not taboo,
You're right.
so we're not like, ooh, we're rebelling against our parents. Like they're out, and we're gonna like drink all their booze.
Yeah.
Like they don't really have that taboo as
Right.
much. I feel like in Europe, so
Well,
it's not as big a problem.
It's the same when you go to Peru. Cocaine everywhere. You can just go to the fucking local drugstore and get a damn matchbox of it. At least they could back in the 80s when I was there. Good high quality cocaine. They didn't abuse that shit. That shit was there for fucking hundreds of years. They didn't care about cocaine. Those white people worried about cocaine. But in Peru, they didn't
Well,
care
like
about
I said, making it illegal, you're making it
You're
illicit.
attractive. You're making it illicit.
and you're making it attractive
Yeah,
to
exactly.
people.
Exactly.
That it otherwise, if you just made it legal and it was just like a part of the culture, no one would give a shit.
They didn't give a shit
No one
about
would
that
give
shit
a
up in
shit.
Peru. No.
You're making it illegal, so now teenagers, the world, the country
ooh,
over, are being
yeah.
like, "Ooh, I'm gonna piss
Yeah.
off my parents. I'm gonna do this, that, and the other thing." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's gonna be like that. So,
Time them bitches out. We got all these damn naked sex bots up in there.
naked sex bot.
Yeah, naked
That
sex
can't
bots.
spell gay.
Yeah.
They spelled it Gey.
G-E, wait, that's got the gay accent along with gay.
Yeah, but if you're gonna spell it like that, it's usually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's usually Ghey.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Where's Zach?
I don't know. Zach isn't here tonight. Danny Rowling says there should be a Natural Born Killers 2 film loosely based on Bonnie and Clyde. Just saying, well, I kind of feel like the first one was kind of loosely based on them. Sort of. But yeah. So what happened? So there was like this big breakout at Eastham prison farm. Now, during the escape, Joe Palmer, who would later go on to join the gang for a brief time, ended up killing... Well, he didn't kill him outright, but there was a guy named Major Joe Krausen. He shot him during his escape. Now, the guy died, like, later, like a couple days later. So he did and kind of ended up killing him. Now, the thing about this big event was that because Clyde and his gang had targeted Eastham Prison and had busted a bunch of inmates out of there, the law enforcement in Texas were like, basically, okay, so everybody kind of came to the party on this. They were all like, we want to get Bonnie and Clyde. And the prison the guy that was like the fucking prison chief, Lee Simmons. He says to the dude that's like the dude that was like running the fucking situation. He's like, look, everybody that's involved in this, we're not just gonna like catch him. We're gonna like kill him, right? So they weren't even interested in catching the people. They were like, we just want them dead. We just want them dead. So the thing about it is that one of the people that escaped, though, was a friend of Clyde and Bonnie, kind of. This dude named whose last name is Methvin. Now this guy actually ended up being the dude that would sort of like be their downfall. You talk for a minute. I gotta pee.
Okay, where'd you going? I didn't hear the setup. She just wants me to talk. She got to go to pee.
Yeah, I gotta.
She good to go.
You never have a problem talking otherwise.
Yeah. I still never had a problem. Let me go to the comments. I'm gonna go to the comments and see what everybody's saying. Okay. Murder Hornet says, well, guys, gotta go. Gotta be somewhere at 8. They were crawling up in his booty looking for cancer the other day. Now they're gonna go down his throat and look for cancer. Yeah. He's talking about napalm and the more Norse. Yeah, Strawgog's talking about War is a Racket from Smedley Butler. Good book. You can get the audio book on YouTube. It's short, about an hour or so. But you listen to that now and you go like, well, of course. It's kind of basic bitch by today's standards. But one thing Smedley does get into, he was a Marine Corps general. He gets into all the banana wars in Central America, which I didn't know about those. All those little Central American countries that the United States fucked over behind fucking banana corporations. That same thing's happening now. They just fucking do it in different ways. All that Ukraine fucking shit too. That's another fucking. Roger Stone came out with a fucking documentary on that. You guys need to see it. And they're trying to block Roger Stone's documentary on Ukraine. Although it is on BitChute. See it on BitChute and you'll find out the truth of that. That's just fucking... Russia won that shit. Okay.
What are you talking about?
Talking about all this fucking weird shit.
What's up, Pokey? She's sitting behind my chair.
Talking about War is a Racket. It's Medley Butler. Okay, she's back.
I'm back, yeah.
True
obviously.
Romance. Straw Dog said that. Yeah, good movie.
Maybe we should review that.
Yeah, I gotta get it. I don't have it.
It was on...
I want to buy that one.
It was on a streaming service recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this dude named Methvin who is one of the guys that they busted out. And there's conflicting stories. It was either like him and his dad, like either he was approached by the cops and was kind of like, yeah, I'll help you set up an ambush for the gang in return for getting like a complete pardon for whatever my crimes were. Or some accounts say that they approached his dad first and said, hey, your son will get a lesser sentence if you help us set up the thing. It doesn't really matter. It's like kind of like the result was kind of like the same, whether it was him or his dad. He's like eating cookies.
Uh-huh.
No. We got to eat after the show, though.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
Because I'm kind of starving. But I still got a long way to go.
I'm hungry. Yeah.
I'm hungry. He's like a toddler. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was that Methvin ends up like helping to set up this ambush. So they contact the former Texas Ranger, Frank Hamer. And he had retired, but he was kind of still on the thing, and he's like, we need you to help us with this ambush that we're doing, like, for the Barrow Gang. Now, he was kind of, like, famous for, one, having killed a lot of people that he was, like, I think it was, like, 53 people. He'd also been shot 17 times, so there was that. So he had, like, a very formidable reputation as just being, like, no bullshit, I'm just gonna, like, fucking shoot you or whatever. 53 kills, yeah.
He was like the fucking Fed's hitman.
Basically. Now, interestingly, even though there's kind of a story that, he was the first dude they approached because he was like, hey, you're the man. But there is some evidence to suggest that they actually went to 2 other rangers first, but both of those rangers said no because they said, I don't want to shoot a woman. Because they knew they'd have to shoot Bonnie as well. And there was still a thing because Bonnie was little and cute and shit like that. And I kind of feel like there was still a thing where they thought that maybe they didn't want to shoot her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will say that I don't know, even though there was some stories later that like, oh, she shot this person, the other, I don't know if she actually really shot and killed anybody. She was there, for sure.
I think she did.
But there was like a story later on that it's like, oh, she shot somebody and like, oh, she laughed when his head bounced on the pavement or whatever. But most other accounts said no, she was sleeping in the car when that shit happened. So I don't know. I think they were kind of trying to like maybe make her look worse than she was like after the fact. I'm not really sure. I don't know if she actually like shot and killed anybody, but they're just saying. But nobody wanted to kill a woman, so there was that. So they bring in Hamer, and Hamer is basically like, look, man, we're just gonna like kill these motherfuckers. Because like I said, at this point, like after the prison break, they were kind of like, we don't even care. We're not gonna bring them in alive. We just want to like fucking shoot them. So what they did, it was Easter Sunday, April 1st, 1934. What happened was there was at the intersection of Dove Road and Route 114. What happened, there was a guy who was a highway patrolman, H.D. Murphy, and another guy named Edward Bryant Wheeler. They stopped the motorcycles, and there was like a car there, and they thought that the car needed assistance. At this point, Clyde and Methvin, or Bonnie, they're not sure, started opening fire. There was a shotgun and handgun. So they killed both of the cops. Now, according to an eyewitness, maybe, Bonnie fired the fatal shots. Maybe. Although no one's really sure. Methvin said that he fired the first shot. But he wasn't sure. Nobody's sure what happened in that situation. So at that point, I think this is kind of where the whole thing came from. Because these shootings, which came known as the Grapevine killings, because it was... The town used to be called Grapevine, Texas. It's called Southlake now. But it was called Grapevine back in the old days. So the media kind of like super exaggerated this. And this was the point where one farmer who said he saw the shit said, oh yeah, Bonnie was like laughing and said, look at the way his head bounced like a rubber ball like after I shot him and shit like that. But Methvin later said that I shot that guy, that Bonnie was just like in the backseat of the car and she didn't shoot anybody. But I don't really know like what the fuck happened there. So that was like a whole fucking media circus. Now, one of the cops was engaged to be married, and I guess his fiancée attracted more media attention by wearing her wedding dress to his funeral. And so, obviously, that got a lot more media coverage. Now, it didn't really matter, though, that, like, a lot of the stuff was, like, later discredited because the public, what?
Straw Dog says, Tom, he's not a Sicilian, but he is a good man. Okay, thank you very much, Straw Dog. I'm not Sicilian, but I am a good man. Okay. That's all he said.
Yeah.
It's funny.
But yeah, so at this point, whether the media accounts were true or not, mostly the public had turned against the Bonnie and Clyde at this point, even though, like I said earlier on, they'd kind of been like romanticized a little bit. So at that point, there was a reward of $1,000, not even for the capture, for the dead bodies of the Grapevine Slayers. That was the quote. They didn't want them captured, they just wanted them dead. And the governor of Texas, Ma Ferguson, at that point also added another reward of $500 for each of the 2 killers. So at that point, since everybody believed that Bonnie was the one that had killed H.D. Murphy, this was the first time that that there had been a price on her head. So there was that. Now, public hostility got a lot worse a couple days later when Clyde and Methvin murdered another dude, a 60-year-old man, Constable William Campbell, who, this was in Oklahoma. Now, what had happened was that they kidnapped a police chief named Percy Boyd, and they crossed the state line into Kansas, and then they let him go. They gave him some money and some clothes and shit like that. And Boyd ended up identifying Clyde and Bonnie to the authorities, but he didn't know who Methvin was, so he was just like a John Doe at the time. So at this point, I feel like the public did not want to believe that Bonnie was actually like a killer, but because of all of this evidence that was mounting, whether it was exaggerated or not, people were finally starting to see that, you know, yeah, she could like shoot and kill people too. Whether she did or not, I don't know. But the public started to perceive that, so they started to like turn against them, where they had been kind of romanticized before. In a cartoon in the Dallas Journal, there was actually a cartoon of like an electric chair, and it had like a little sign on it that said reserved for Bonnie and Clyde, like on the fucking electric chair. So there was that. So May of 1934, Clyde had 16 warrants outstanding against him. Multiple counts: robbery, auto theft, escape, assault, and murder in 4 different states. So Hamer had started tracking the gang back in February. And he had found out that what they were doing, as we mentioned earlier, because they knew of the whole thing where you can't like catch people if they go like from state to state, they said, okay, well, this gang has been exploiting that fact. So what they would do was that they would exploit the state line rule. You know, officers couldn't pursue somebody over a state line, like, you know, into somebody else's jurisdiction. Now, they did kind of go around like in a spiral movement. They were trying to like visit everyone's family. They were doing that kind of shit. But Hamer kind of figured out like what they were doing. So he kind of had a good idea where they were going to go next. So he got together, like, along with Methvin, who had, like, was one of the ones that they had busted out of Eastham, but also he had, like, later turned against them. So they set up an ambush posse. So Hamer's posse was, like, 6 men total, like, including him. 4 of them were Texas officers, and 2 of them were Louisiana officers. So they figured out, the posse, they figured out they're in Shreveport, and then they're like, well, Clyde and Bonnie are going to be visiting Ivy Methvin, who was, I think, like, Methvin's dad, and in Louisiana. So they set up an ambush along Louisiana State Highway 154. And so they're in place. Now, there's kind of like, it doesn't really matter what day it took place, but they're just kind of like, it was somewhere around May 22nd or May 23rd, somewhere like that. So about 9:15 in the morning, May 23rd, the posse's in the bushes. And they're kind of like, they've been there for a long time, and they're just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, nobody's going to come along. What the hell's going on? We're bored. And then finally, they see this car driving toward them high speed. Now, what ended up happening was that they had put Methvin, either Methvin or Methvin's dad, they had put him in a car, and they said, well, put it on the shoulder of the road so it looks like you're having car trouble, because they think because Clyde knows you, like, he'll stop and be like, hey, man, what's wrong? So they wanted to do that. So they did that. So what they did, so the car is coming close, and it's Clyde. It's his Ford V8. And Clyde was driving. Now, he did slow down to see what the fuck was going on with this car because he recognized it. Now, when the car slowed down, the cops asked no questions. They immediately recognized that car, and they just started shooting. You know what I mean? They didn't, like I said, they didn't even... I mean, I hope that they would be sure that that was that car. It would be sad if it was just like some random citizen that happened to have the same car and was speeding. But it wasn't, happily. It was Clyde. So he slowed down a little bit, and the cops just fucking started shooting. And honestly, they had plugged so many, like, fucking bullets into that car. They're like, by the time it got even with them, I'm pretty sure that both Clyde and Bonnie were probably already dead. Because they fucking riddled that shit with bullets. Clyde got shot in the head pretty much died instantly from one of the first shots. Because the car kind of like went past them and then it kind of like went into a ditch, but they just kept shooting. The cops fired 130 rounds, emptying each of their weapons into the car. So they were kind of like, well, I kind of feel like they were feeling like, well, hey, we've shot at these motherfuckers multiple times in the past. Like, maybe not them, but the cops had shot at them multiple times in the past, and they were still running around. So they're like, one of the cops said, yeah, we weren't taking any chances. We just, like, shot until, like, all of their ammunition was empty, pretty much. They just kept shooting. Now, they did actually take some film footage. You can see it on YouTube. I actually watched it earlier. One of the deputies, this was immediately after the ambush, 112 bullet holes in the vehicle. About a quarter of these struck Bonnie and Clyde. As I mentioned earlier, the coroner, whose name was Dr. Wade, he listed 17 entrance wounds on Clyde's body, 26 on Bonnie's body, including several headshots, and another shot that had severed Clyde's spinal column. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, the Undertaker bitched because he had a hard time embalming the bodies because there were so many bullet holes that the embalming fluid kept leaking out. I've seen pictures of the bodies on the slab. Like, I've seen pictures of the car with the bodies inside. I've seen videos of the car with the bodies inside. It doesn't look that grisly because it's black and white. And I've seen photos of, like, them in the mortuary. They don't, like, their faces don't look that bad. Like, their bodies are covered up. But, I mean, you can tell they're dead, but it doesn't look that fucking gross. But apparently they were fucking, like, riddled with bullets. Also, the officer shot so many that they were all, like, partially deaf for a time. So there was that. So they go into the death car and they found a whole fucking arsenal of weapons. Stolen automatic rifles, semi-automatic shotguns, sawed-off, bunch of handguns, several thousand rounds of ammunition, 15 sets of license plates from various states. So there you go. They found all kind of shit in there. Now, what ended up happening after this, though, was that because all of the cops were like, hey, we killed Bonnie and Clyde, it's over, and they all, like, ran to, you know, the phones to, like, call their bosses or whatever and say, hey, we did it. And so the public found out about it, and because this was the 1930s, a huge crowd gathered, and they all immediately started, like, stealing shit from the car.
Yeah, they always do this.
One of them, like, somebody was trying to, like, cut off Clyde's trigger finger.
Oh, man.
Another person was trying to cut off his ear. A bunch of people were, like, just stealing, like, bits of clothing and shit, like, because they were going to sell that shit. So people talk about shit being like, oh, the good old days. Yeah, fuck that. These people were, like, fucking, they swooped in like vultures. Ooh, can I take, like, some body parts? I could sell that shit on, like, well, you couldn't sell it on eBay back then, but obviously. It was just kind of like, well, I'm going to sell this. Nobody was, like, grossed out. Nobody was just like, ooh, they're famous. I'm just going to get in. But, like, somebody was in there trying to, like, cut off locks of Bonnie's hair and shit like that. Even though it was all covered with blood. Shit like that. Cutting off pieces of her dress. Tons of people in there doing kind of shit like that. And sold them as souvenirs later on. So, like I said, good old days. That's what people did back then. So, yeah. So, it was like a fucking circus. Now, again, the car, I kind of feel like I saw the car, and I'm glad somebody, like, mentioned it earlier in the comments, because I know that I saw Bonnie and Clyde's death car as a kid, and I couldn't remember where I saw it. And he said, yeah, it was at Ripley's, believe it or not, in St. Augustine, and I was like, well, that must have been where I saw it, because I went there, like, a lot as a kid, and I know that I saw that as a kid, so that's probably where I saw it. So, interestingly, so they take the bodies to, you know, the mortuary, which was actually, the mortuary, or the Undertaker, was in the same business as the furniture store, which I guess was, like, pretty common back then, which is weird, but it makes sense because furniture store, it's wood, you make coffins, blah, blah, blah. So there's that. So they kind of took in the back, and they said that the population of the town where this happened was originally 2,000 people, and then they had an extra 10,000 people like show up like a few hours later, like looking for everything. Like they all just came in there, like converged on the place, and like everything went up. Like all the prices of the beer went up, everything went up.
Kind of like back in the day when they had executions, they start
Yeah.
selling off fucking condiments and shit. Not condoms, what do you call it?
I mean, they're just taking
Concessions.
advantage. They're like, look, some like famous shit happened.
Yeah.
We're like gonna make some
Here's some
money out of
popcorn,
this shit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hot dogs.
that's what happened. So there's that. So yeah, a lot of people came in. Now Bonnie and Clyde had actually, they knew they were gonna die. They kind of, like I said, had a suicide pact kind of thing. Like not officially, but they kind of had a thing where they knew that was gonna happen. They wanted to be buried next to each other, but Bonnie's family said, nah, we're not doing it. She's like, I think her mom even said, look, Clyde had her while she was alive. Her family's going to have her when she's dead.
Right.
So they took her back and buried her like with the family. Clyde was actually buried, I believe, next to his brother Buck, who was also killed like earlier on in their crime spree. And they're kind of like under a shared tombstone that says, gone but not forgotten. I think that was something that Clyde wanted on there. So there was that. Interestingly, thousands and thousands, and there's video of this too, because like I said, this was only 1930s. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people turned up to see the funerals. I mean, there's like a line. You can see like the funeral home, like where they have the thing. There's like a fucking line around the fucking block, like of people that came to see the bodies. It's crazy. They said they got flowers from all over the place. Some of the gangsters, Pretty Boy Floyd and John Dillinger, who would actually like be killed a few years later.
Dillinger was one of the main ones. He was such a badass.
He got killed like only a couple years after Bonnie and Clyde did, I think. And Pretty Boy Floyd got killed too. Like, not,
him.
A lot of them got killed like later on.
Him and Nelson, Babyface Nelson. What was his name?
Babyface.
Charles Nelson. Charles Nelson.
I don't remember what his first name was. It's just Babyface.
Yeah. He didn't like that. If you called him Babyface, he'd kill you. Isn't that funny? That was something that came from the
Even
media.
though everybody just remembers that.
Yeah. That
You
was
think
from
if
the
you
media.
got like a cool nickname, then you would
Somebody
embrace
called
it.
him Babyface to his face and fucking during one of those robberies, and I think he shot him, if I remember correctly.
Like, hey,
Says, don't you
Babyface.
ever call me
I
that."
know you.
He hated that. Yeah. He hated that. I think his name was Charles Nelson.
Call me Charles, goddamn.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that.
Yeah.
Like, because usually, like, if people give you a nickname, it's usually something that you really, really don't like about yourself.
You're right.
I would imagine.
If I remember correctly, fucking Charles Nelson was a World War I vet. If I remember, he didn't play. He was like this. He was a motorized bandit. You'll see.
One of the funniest things was that this is from Wikipedia. The largest floral tribute was sent by a group of Dallas City newsboys. The reason they sent it was because the murder of, or you know, the slaying of Bonnie and Clyde had sold 500,000 newspapers in Dallas. So I guess they were kind of like happy that's like, thanks for the publicity, or thanks for like selling all these papers. So they sent like a big huge, which is weird, but they sent like a big huge floral thing to their fucking funeral.
George Nelson was his name.
Oh, okay, George.
George
All right.
Nelson, yeah.
Interestingly, I found this interesting too. So the interestingly, both Bonnie and Clyde had insurance policies, and the insurance companies paid out on them. But I guess since then, I don't know if it was because of this case particularly, but they don't do this anymore. If you have a thing nowadays like insurance policy, like life insurance, if you've been involved in criminal activity and get killed as a result of that criminal activity, I guess they don't pay out for that anymore. But back then they did. So there was that. Also, interestingly, the men on the posse that killed Bonnie and Clyde, the 6 dudes, they were supposed to get 1/6 each of the reward money. So this was supposed to be $26,000. I don't know if that's total or if that was like what they were each supposed to get, which would have been like a big sum back then. But the thing about it was that most of the companies that had like put that money up said like, nah, we don't want to pay that now. Like now that it actually happened. So each of them ended up getting about $200. And they said, oh, well, if you want to like collect anything off the death car, you can do that. So they did. A couple of them, like one of them got like Clyde's saxophone because he was a saxophone player. Like they just like stole shit out of the car and like had to sell it for fucking, which is crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, so there's the whole thing. So after that, like some of the other members of the gang, most of the other members of the gang eventually got killed in various other things. And I think just one of them like survived, maybe. That was just kind of a thing. But like I said, it's just kind of funny how, I don't know, I just kind of laughed at the whole thing about like the cops. They were just kind of like, hey, you can just like scrounge shit out of their death car. One of them took like a tackle box with like fishing shit in it.
Well, it was over.
It's fucking crazy. Well, they were supposed to get some of the reward money. They didn't even get that. They didn't even get that. Which, you know, it's
I understand. For the time, you know what I mean? They didn't think it was a big deal. Yeah, go ahead and take the shit.
I mean, just take that. Whatever. They just got like $200. Yeah. Here's $200. Which I don't know how much $200 was back then. That was probably like
a couple thousand.
It's like, here, have a saxophone and like a tackle box full of stuff. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Funny.
It is. But, you know. And as I mentioned earlier, Blanche, who was Buck's wife, like Buck died, obviously, like during the spree. But she survived. She actually went to prison for a little while. I think it was like 6 years or something like that. She was the one that was like partially blinded by the glass. And while she was in prison, she wrote a memoir about her time with them. And a friend of hers found it like much later on, like in her attic or some kind of shit. So that was actually like published later on. So she actually had a diary of like all this. It wasn't a diary because she didn't write it at the time, but she wrote it like a year or two afterward. And she kind of like wrote about what it was like being on the road with them all the time. So it was, from her, it was where a lot of that stuff came. Just like, oh, it wasn't glamorous at all. And they were like fighting all the time. And, you know, it was like really not fun because they were just like living in the car and they were just at each other's throats all the time. So there was that. But the death car, as far as I know, I saw it when I was a kid because, like you said, it was at Ripley's in St. Augustine, which is still there, by the way, and Ripley's is still fun because I just went there like last June. But 1988, a casino near Las Vegas bought the death car for about $250,000, and apparently still has it. And as of this year, the car and the shirt that Clyde was wearing when he was killed is at this place called the Primm Valley Resort and Casino in Primm, Nevada, on Interstate 15. So if you want to see it, that's where it is. That's where it is. So, as I mentioned, Henry Methvin, who was the guy that had conspired to, like, help out with the ambush, he actually ended up escaping prosecution for the Grapevine, Texas murders because he, you know, turned against Bonnie and Clyde. But he got prosecuted for other crimes in Oklahoma, which I believe was also a murder. And he got convicted and served 8 years there. Like I said, Blanche ended up serving 6 years, and she got out, and they found her diary later on. So what happened in 1935 was that federal authorities and the police in Dallas, they arrested and tried 20 family members and friends of Bonnie and Clyde for aiding and abetting. So this was known as the harboring trial. All 20 either pleaded guilty or were found guilty. The two moms, Clyde's mom and Bonnie's mom, got jailed for 30 days. Other sentences ranged from 2 years imprisonment to 1 hour imprisonment. That was like
1 hour.
That was for like one of the teenage girls or something like that. So there was that. So that's pretty much like I kind of feel like that's probably about it, right? And like I said, after I kind of feel like it was a big deal at the time, but after the movie came out in 1967, there was like renewed interest, I feel like, in the case because it was very romanticized. People saw it as like this big love story, which I guess it kind of was, but
probably not really.
I don't know. By all accounts, it was. but it's also like super fucked up.
They're
But
running around in a damn car with no air conditioning, fucking on dirt roads, and it wouldn't have been very romantic. It would have been like being in the field in the army.
But see, the thing about it was that back then everybody was in the same situation.
That's true.
So
It was a rough
nobody
time.
really had. It wasn't like nowadays where it's like, what, you don't have any air conditioning
Yeah.
or like place to shower.
Right.
Back then, nobody did.
Nobody did. It
So
didn't
everybody
matter.
had like a lot more.
Yeah.
Everybody was a lot more forgiving of people like being
Yeah.
being stinky or like a little unhygienic. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. All right, so we can probably go ahead and shut it down. I'll make us something to eat. You ready?
I suppose so.
All right.
We've been like 3 hours and 40 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
trying to like look and see if you're like
It's been a good show.
yeah, we had a good time. And we mostly stayed on topic.
Yeah, we did. for the
Most
part.
of the time,
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, this was a fun show. I had a good time like researching all of that.
We'll be back when,
Friday night
Friday.
for the Sidetracks show.
but we'll have live streams tomorrow or the next day.
No,
Next
Friday.
Day. Friday. Okay.
That's what I just said.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
Friday.
Friday. That's right.
See, listen to what I said.
Man, I'm gonna go ahead.
Listen to what I said.
I'm going.
He's going.
I'm going.
All right. Thank you all for dropping by this evening. Thank you for your super chats. Hopefully you enjoyed the show this evening. I try to stay on topic as much as possible. So we will see you guys again on Friday night for our Sidetrack show, on which we do not have to worry about staying on topic because we can just talk about whatever. So hopefully you guys will join us again on Friday evening, and we'll see you all then. Thank you all for dropping by. We will see you later.